Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Franklin Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, May 22nd, 2024. The meeting has been properly posted. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mrs. Yank?
Here.
Mrs. Sapersky?
Here.
Mrs. Witkowski?
Here.
Dr. Beer?
Here.
Mr. Sprague?
Here.
And Dr. Khan is on his way. He will be arriving late.
Thank you. We all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
So move. Second.
Motion was made by Mrs. Witkowski, seconded by Mrs. Sapersky. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Presentations, tobacco poster winners. Ms. Henry, please.
Hello, my name is Megan Conway. Ms. Henry has since transitioned out of the position. I am the new DFC coordinator. She's still around in the health department, just moving to a different position. If you guys are okay with it for the sake of time, I'd like to have all of my poster winners come up to the front and we will distribute your posters out for you as I talk a little bit. We'll just have you go right in a line up here. All right, so we are super excited to once again have tobacco poster winners this year. This is our 28th year continuing with this poster presentation tradition. The students have a very lengthy kind of process with this. So every year in January / February, we do presentations with all of the students in the 7th grade class at Forest Park Middle School. This year, we also got to do them at the Indian Community School. So we had the whole community participating, which was awesome. Each student got a presentation on the dangers of tobacco and nicotine. We told them how they can create a strong message to share with the community so that they can know the facts about these harmful substances, kind of give information to their peers and youth and families in the community on why it's a good decision to not use these substances. And then with that, they got to create their own artwork. We had over 300 submissions of artwork from 7th grade students this year, which was fantastic. And then with that, at the health department, we took all of those posters. There's a couple guidelines the students have to follow, like no death and dying in their messages, that kind of stuff. We go through them. All of the posters that follow those guidelines are put into a Google form, and then that form is sent out to members throughout the community. So we at the health department at Volition are not making any of the voting decisions. It's all based from community members, fire chief, police chief, Volition community members, people from all over the place. And with those votes come our top 10 winners. So each winner that is here today received a foam board copy of the poster that they created. They also got a certificate and a $100 Visa gift card for them to spend. The fees for that all come out from tobacco poster licenses throughout the city of Franklin. So we're very lucky to be able to use that licensing and put it back into the community, into prevention. So congratulations to each and every one of you. We are so proud of all the work that you've done. If you guys have any questions, I'd love to answer them. Otherwise, it would be fantastic if we could do a group photo to share to the community. We will also do individual social media posts for all of you guys on the health department Facebook page, as well as the Volition Facebook page and our Volition Instagram.
Megan, do you think you could have the microphone passed down too so they could each introduce themselves?
Absolutely. If you guys want to introduce yourselves and talk really quick about why you chose to draw what you did, that would be fantastic.
I'm OTL Sally, and I drew this to show how people waste money on cigars and other things that can lead to a lot of harm. And the addiction can cause you lots of money.
I'm Ava, and I did this to show how smoking can affect your brain and how you act.
I'm Ava Daniels, and I drew this because even though someone looks good on the outside, they're not always having the best time on the inside.
I'm Ashlyn Jones, and I drew this because I feel like a lot of the time people are thinking about how vaping affects them like physically, but they're not really thinking about how it affects them mentally.
I'm Chancellor Dens. I drew this because I wanted people to know like how harmful it is, and I added the pun that you don't suck on a vape, so don't get sucked in.
I'm Shakti Lucky, and I drew this to show how smoking affects everybody, not just the people who smoke.
I'm Claire Lee, and I drew this to show how other people can also be affected and how they might not like smoking that you smoke.
I'm Radhika Kumar, and I drew this because I just wanted to show that smoking is not really great for your health, so it's better to be without smoking.
A quick round of applause. Hold her out so all of the wonderful school board can see what you've made as well.
Don't worry about the background, I'll fix that. I'll fix that in post.
Yeah.
All right, I'll take it on 3. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3 big smiles. There we go. Thank you.
Good job, guys.
Yeah, very nice.
Thank you. All right. Oh, thanks, Jeff. Right. I appreciate a good fun.
Thank you, everyone, and please feel welcome to stay, but please don't feel obligated to stay. Item B, Tony Morrissey, Pleasant View Phi-Ed teacher for presentation on pedometers. Mr. Morrissey, please.
Thank you. As Principal Imperiale gets set and Mr. Morrissey, I know Vicky with the Education Foundation also is amongst us. I just lost you in the crowd. But this presentation is also in partnership with working with the Education Foundation. And in one of my visits, most Thursday mornings I spend in schools. A couple months ago, I was in Mr. Morrissey's Phi-Ed class, which is always fun. I was brought into flag football, getting good at workout with, I think, some third grade students that day. But he talked about the pedometers and really wanted to come to the board and present to all of you to share the partnership in getting the grant for the classroom, and then also how he's really worked hard to lead in the building and tie this into what's going on in the classrooms with his fellow colleagues. So I'm not going to take their story, but I just thought it was really exciting because a lot of times people get nervous to come present at a board meeting, and Tony asked to do this for all of you to really build this partnership. So thank you, Tony.
All right, thank you. I'll let each of the students introduce themselves real quick. These are some 5th graders.
My name's Amelia Richards.
My name's Sahib Singh.
My name is Logan Brewer.
And I'm Tony Morrissey.
And so to piggyback off what Ms. Bennon said, I think the example you're going to see here is a perfect partnership between when we talk about the coherence plan and using evidence-based teaching practices. And I think one thing in the specials, so like art, music, Phi-Ed, is they're really looking for ways to build skills that transcend no matter what the unit is. So for in this example, right, like not every student up here probably loves soccer or pickleball, right? But like, how do you get that student engagement, and what are those life skills that you're building? And then additionally, like student engagement, and how do you engage them in that? And so what Mr. Morrissey here is going to kind of show is how he's built that engagement, like some real-time data with their learning, and how this is like just a life skill that the students can attest to what they've learned.
All right, thank you, Ashley. So I'll kind of just jump right into it. So my objective with this project was to continue to advocate for quality physical education and kind of come up with an objective way to assess students in PE. I feel like in physical education, a lot of the ways we assess students can be kind of subjective, like how can I really tell how hard a student is working? Part of my physical education philosophy is that there's a big difference between a gym teacher and a physical educator. I think, a gym teacher is someone who rolls out the ball cart. Kids are playing dodgeball every day. It's like an extra recess, whereas a physical educator is really focused on the education aspect, assessing the cognitive, the affective, the psychomotor domains, really capturing the whole student. So we worked together with the Franklin Educational Foundation with Vicki, and we were able to purchase these pedometers in the spring of last year, and this is our first full year putting them to use. So the reason I wanted to get these, I went to the Wisconsin Health and PE convention, and one of the sessions I attended was talking about exactly this. And the teacher who was presenting in his district, he really struggled with community support. Anytime he would input his grades, the parents would fight back, say, why does my student have this grade? Why is my student doing well? Why is my student not doing well? And he didn't really have that concrete data to show. So this is exactly why we have the pedometers to help with that. And I really believe that this project helped or aligns well with the Better Place to Work, Better Place to Learn, and part of a better community. For us PE teachers, we have now, if we use these, have that concrete data to share with families, share with all of you, share with our principals. I know this is something I use for my SLO and PPG, so it makes things easier for us. For the students, it introduces them to a lot of fitness concepts and kind of ways to take control of their own personal fitness. I know by show of hands, how many people here have some sort of fitness tracking device? Right? I know I live and die by closing I used to have an Apple Watch, closing the rings. It's just something about it. You pat yourself on the back, you hit your stand goal, you hit your move goal. So for whatever reason, we are extremely motivated by fitness tracking technology. So introducing students to that. And then part of the Better Community, we're inspiring these kids to continue to live healthy lifestyles, from now when they're in school all the way through their adulthood, finding that way to keep themselves active throughout their entire lives. So we implemented this with fifth graders this year, with it being my first year doing it. I wanted to kind of start with our oldest students. I figured it'd be easiest to kind of get them on board and get them in tune with all the technology. I didn't really know exactly what to expect, but we kind of just hit the ground running at the beginning of the year and went from there. So students are wearing their pedometers for most classes. We didn't wear them for things like our gymnastics unit. Didn't want people rolling over them, but yeah. So eventually, the plan is to get each and every grade, each and every student using them. So Amelia, Sahib, and Logan are going to take over the next couple slides and talk about our process, our modes on the pedometers, and how we upload them at the end of class.
My name is Amelia Richards, and I will be explaining the start to our pedometer process each class. Each student is assigned a pedometer number at the beginning of the year. It's important that we grab the correct pedometer so we don't get our scores mixed up with our classmates. We make sure to clear out the previous student's stats so we have accurate information right from the start. We show a couple classmates or Mr. Morrissey that our pedometer is at a 0 just to double check. Once our pedometers are on, we clip it and forget it in order to get our most accurate score. Next, Sahib is going to explain the 3 different modes we use in our pedometers.
My name is Sahib Singh, and I'll be explaining the 3 different modes on our pedometers. First is steps. It's pretty simple. This mode measures the total steps you take during a class period and taking intensity to account. For example, a slow walk would be measured the same as a fast run. Third is MVPA, which stands for Moderate to Vigorous Physical Activity. MVPA is a movement with purpose. The MVPA mode tracks anything above 110 steps per minute. Next, Logan will explain how we upload the pedometers during the end of the class.
My name is Logan Brewer, and I'll be explaining a quick and easy process of uploading our pedometers at the end of class. In total, it takes about 2 to 3 minutes to complete the entire class. We are instantly able to see our scores either on the laptop screen or projected on the wall of the gym. We have a chance to analyze our data by comparing activity time, MVPA, and physical activity time.
If you look at the graphic there on the right-hand side, it shows the stats from a 5th grade class over 4 class periods. So the student number, pedometer number 11, and it's based off of average MVPA time per class. So student 11 had 44 minutes and 39 seconds of MVPA time throughout those 4 classes, so the average of about 11 minutes and 10 seconds. And where you can kind of see what we do a lot is compare the data of activity time to MVPA time. So we're looking to have our MVPA time be as close as possible to the total activity time, just showing that our activity is that moderate to vigorous range. And then on the student on the bottom, even though they were only there for 1 class that week, their average was still a little bit lower. Obviously, we would hope for, if they were there for a couple more days, that the average would start to bump up. But you can kind of see how the data changes based off of how long you're there, how many days you're there for. So that's kind of what the students are seeing when they're uploading their pedometers. So some of the findings we had, the averages are all there up on the screen. The scores came out to be a little bit lower than I had expected, but I think a lot of that has to do with the first couple months of that learning curve, or first couple weeks of that learning curve. Was a lot of me teaching the students how to wear them, how to grab them, making sure you have the right number. So I still have all the confidence in the world that this is going to be a really beneficial program. 63% of the students were in the active to highly active range. That post on the side there, the pedometer power, was made by Mike Graham. He was a Illinois physical education teacher of the year, and he's been using the pedometers for years. So he has a lot of data put together, and it says that highly active is anything more than 10 minutes, active is 7 to 10, and then somewhat active would be anything below that. So a lot of students were close to that range, but we'll be kind of shooting to get students into that active to highly active range. And then as far as some things to consider, or if you could go back to the next slide.
Sorry.
You're good, thank you. So yeah, just a couple of things to consider. I talked about the learning curve at the beginning of the year. Some lower intensity days, like when we do our team building unit at the beginning of the year, we're not necessarily moving all about the gym. We're kind of more stationary, working together, things like that. And then I've been considering some ways to improve the process of it so it goes a little faster, so we're really maximizing our time for each class. And then some of my next steps here. So I would like to begin implementing this as an assessment strategy for physical education. I think getting rid of that subjective where I'm just watching the kid and being like, all right, you're working hard, you're kind of slacking, using this concrete data to support our quality physical education. So I modified what Mike Graham had put together, just because his district is on a 3-point scale, whereas ours is on a 4-point scale. So you can see some of the differences there, but still shooting for those numbers that he had, because I do think when we put a challenge in front of our students, they rise to the occasion and they're able to do some really great things. So this assessment schedule here kind of rewards the students for working hard, and it kind of allows us to, again, have that concrete data. And then just one of the main things that I've been able to do with this is just kind of reflecting on my own teaching. Like when I saw these numbers, it really forced me to think about, like, am I maximizing our opportunities in PE? Am I allowing these kids to really get the most out of their movement while learning? And then I'm also looking for more ways where students can analyze their data, so sharing with them, whether it's weekly or monthly reports, because they all do get really fired up when we are, looking at our stats at the end of class. So my 5th grade friends up here, they're going to share some of their testimonials about our pedometer use. So go ahead, Amelia.
What I like most about using the pedometers in PE is being able to see the movement and activity I had throughout each class. The pedometers have positively impacted my PE experience because they motivate me to do better in each class, and they create friendly competition between me and my friends.
The thing I like most about using pedometers in PE is the competition it creates amongst my peers. Using the pedometers also encourages me to intensify my PE experiments.
Using pedometers in PE inspires me to work as hard as I can, and it motivates me to beat my score from previous classes. Pedometers have possibly impacted my PE experience because I like being able to see my total steps, activity time, and MVPA at the end of class.
All right, so just a couple shout outs. Thank you here. Franklin Educational Foundation and Vicki for making this possible and granting us to get these pedometers. Ashley, she's been nothing but supportive of my kind of nerding out about PE. Anytime I asked to do something new or go to a conference, she's been, she has my back. So I really appreciate that and her efforts to help me continue to grow in my teaching. Superintendent Ben, and I know you talked about it, has come into my class a couple times. I meant to put a picture up there, but I got a great picture of her playing a flag football game, getting chased by a first grader. So
You ran like a third grade.
my fifth grade friends up here, Amelia, Sahib, and Logan, for coming to share our experience. And then all of the board members, attendees. I know this is the only reason why everybody came today. So thank you very much.
Treats over there, and we'd like a picture, please. And run around the building with your pedometers on for about 10 minutes.
Yeah, right. Gotta take care of those things.
A little more action photo. Guys need more action.
Hold up the case. Oh.
It's like, I don't know why they give you such a sturdy case.
It's a very sturdy case.
Dealer no
That's awesome. Yeah, dealer no deal. Nice. Thanks, guys. Thank you. You might want to. No. We won't go there. You dreamer, you. Thank you for coming. You did amazing.
All right, thank you. Friends of Franklin. Styled aesthetic, Kyle Wera. Mr. Kafka, please.
Kyle here? Yeah. Oh. We haven't met face to face until now, so. Is this one on? There we go. Hi. Nice to meet you face to face. Nice to meet you. Perfect. So I'm going to read a little thing. Kyle has been nominated as a friend of Franklin. So Kyle is a former graduate of Franklin High School, and he's the original designer of the Sabre mascot. So. So when he was here as a student and during the 1999 to 2000 timeframe, that's when he designed the new Sabre, and we'll take a look at that in a minute. He still lives in the community. He now works for Styled Aesthetics in South Milwaukee as a graphic designer, and they also produce t-shirts and stickers and other promotional items. Kyle has helped us out not only with sprucing up the FHS logo this year, but also with creating newer mascots for the logos for Ben Franklin, Robinwood, and our school in the Milwaukee Community Reintegration Center, the South Campus. His company also prints a variety of promotional materials, like I said. He's been super collaborative to work with. I've been very grateful for his time because as I was in this role and we were looking to do things with logos for the schools, him and I connected and I was just like, can you help? And he said yes every time. So I've been super appreciative of that. So thank you very much. And then very quickly, quick little historical context. So this actually came from someone else that I'm talking to about the history of our branding and our logos in Franklin. Does anyone recognize any of the logos up there? These are from the 1970s into 1998-ish, 1999-ish. So first it was the weird yellow one on the top left that you can't really tell it's a saber. Then they used kind of like a Clemson paw for a little while. And then that saber at the bottom, I think, was used for a year is what I'm learning. If you go to the next slide. So then when Kyle designed the Sabre, this was a variation of it. What we found, and the reason I connected with Kyle, was over time, people would give the Sabre to a print company and they would redraw it so that it could be used on t-shirts and uniforms and stickers and things like that. And it kept becoming, like, you know how you make a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy? It kept losing a little bit each time. So this is probably a variation of that. If you look closely, you can see he embedded his initials in the neck, KW. So you said that was from a teacher suggesting that, I think? Who was the teacher, do you remember?
Mr. Press.
Mr. Press, yeah, but Gary Press, for those who worked with him in the past. If you go to the next one.
So then in the fall of 2020, Ben Franklin really didn't have like a mascot that they were using. They were kind of using a variation of the Sabres. So those are kind of the logos at the top left. They held a design contest. And so through Kyle and some others, it was a PTO, one of the PTO members, they designed these 3 different looking Bobcats. The students picked the Bobcats. They wanted to go with the gold color since a lot of our schools in the district were now using gold. And so then that's Kyle's final design that is the current mascot and logo at Ben Franklin. And then we did the same thing for Robinwood in the fall of 2022. Robinwood had the roar as kind of their logo, but they really wanted a cat. Students and the student council were kind of asking for that. And so through the principal there at the time, they did different logo design contests. And then our art teacher, Jackie, actually designed the one that won, the hand drawing with Robinwood roar and the jaguar facing you. And then Kyle turned that into the digital graphic that you see on the right. And next one. This was for the South Campus, which is our school within the Milwaukee Center, Reintegration Center. And so the students there that are in our system for school, they wanted to brand themselves. And so they worked with the teachers there, and they wanted to have something that they could kind of be their mascot. So that was a student drawing on the left, and then Kyle turned it into the leopards, the South Campus leopards. So they used that as theirs. And then the last one, this was a refresh that we did this year of the high school logo. As I mentioned, we kind of kept getting this copy of a copy of a copy. And so went back to asking Kyle, can we just refresh it and get kind of a cleaner version? And so he cleaned up the lines and made it look really nice and smooth. And this is the one we've been slowly implementing into our newsletters and web pages and other designs and things like that over this last year. So thank you so much for all your help, because this is making us look good, literally.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you.
Did he get his bag of candy? Bag of candy? Very cool. Now I'm not gonna look at that, but let's see. I know, really.
All right, we'll move on to community comment. For the last couple of meetings, for those that have not been here, we've had several staff want to speak and that don't live in the district. So we've asked to suspend that rule. However, one of the other constraints is we have 15 minutes total. We do have 5 staff members that wish to speak, some that live in Franklin, some that don't. And we have one other community member that wishes to speak. But I'd like to get consensus on whether we should just limit all comments to 15 minutes, but let everybody speak.
I like that idea. I mean, with only 6. Can we do it? Yeah.
Yes. Great, thank you, everyone. We will start with Joey Marchand.
Hi, I'm Joey Marchand, 8164 South Legend Drive. This is my daughter, Lily. As we come to the end of Lily's senior year at Franklin Public Schools, I've had a lot of time to reflect on her time in the district. There have been many highs and lows, but tonight I want to take an opportunity to extend my deepest thanks to the remarkable individuals within this district who have played an instrumental role in educating my daughter and all the special needs students. First, the district's dedicated educational aides whose unwavering support and tireless commitment have not gone unnoticed or unappreciated. They have been the guiding lights, pillars of strength, and silent champions standing beside Lily and all the special needs students every step of the way. Their patience, empathy, and compassion have not only enriched my daughter's learning experience, but instilled in her a sense of belonging and confidence that goes beyond the confines of the classroom. Second, I want to thank Lily's extraordinary special needs teachers over the years who have possessed an unparalleled gift of seeing Lily's potential and the determination to help her unlock it. Their innovative approaches, personalized care, and enthusiasm over the years have transformed challenges into opportunities and setbacks into triumphs. They have nurtured resilience, independence, and self-belief in her, giving her a foundation for a future filled with possibilities. And finally, the dedicated occupational therapists, speech therapists, and all other supporting teachers who are in some ways the unsung heroes. Their expertise, guidance, and unwavering encouragement have empowered her with the ability to overcome obstacles, embrace her strengths, and reach new heights. I wish I had enough time to list all the people who have worked with Lily, both past and present, that have impacted her life and enabled her to do the things that she can do today. These individuals have had an impact on Lily's education, as well as every other special needs child in our district, which cannot be measured through standardized testing, but they are successes nonetheless. Success is unique to each student, defined by their personal growth and ability to navigate the world around them with dignity and purpose as they interact with their community beyond their school years. Having special needs children has taught me many things, but most of all this. Every child deserves the opportunity to learn, grow, and thrive regardless of their challenges. Providing tailored support and resources empowers these children to overcome obstacles and unlock their unique talents and contribute meaningfully to their community. Our children can teach invaluable lessons about determination, compassion, and the endless possibilities of the human spirit. Lily has taught me many things: empathy, joy, and sheer determination. And I admire her for all the challenges that she's overcome so far in her life. I encourage the board to better understand and appreciate the hard work and dedication the special needs staff has in the Franklin Public School system. And I also challenge everyone here to try and get to know the wonderful, amazing, and unique students that are here tonight and within the district that have special needs. When you see them in the school or in the community, say hi and get to know these kids. I promise that your life will be so much better because of it.
Thank you very much. Brandy Baker, please.
My name is Brandy Baker. I'm a Franklin resident, parent, and teacher. Later tonight, you will be presented with a compensation proposal. I strongly encourage you not to accept this proposal. Speaking personally, I feel that the district continually asks too much and gives very little in return. Let us talk about what you ask of me as a teacher. We are being asked to do more and more without getting anything. You ask us to support all our learners, to analyze data, determine gaps in learning, plan lessons, interventions, close gaps, determine extensions for our high flyers. At the elementary level, we have to do this across multiple content areas. You ask us to unpack standards, learn new curriculum, be knowledgeable of new trends in education. This work cannot happen between 4 and 8. So you ask me to give up my personal time. You ask me to take away time from my own child to meet the needs of the students I serve. Finally, you ask me to get paid so little, I have to find another job and sacrifice more time away from my own child. You ask and ask and ask, and you give so little. So let me ask you something. Who do you want doing this work? Who do you want educating your children? I know in my experience, I've always wanted my son to have the best teachers who not only have knowledge, but have experience. In today's day and age, with an influx of information readily available, I promise my 24 years of experience and extensive knowledge of systems and strategies that work far outweigh 5 years of experience with a master's degree. But the plan you will be presented does not acknowledge or benefit me. Do you really think that degree makes me a better teacher? So let's talk more about what you asked for. As an employee and resident, you want me to support a referendum. You're asking me to raise my taxes to improve our schools, but guess what? I wholeheartedly support it, and I will always do what's best for students. But I ask you, as an employee, what are you giving me in return? According to this compensation plan, not a whole lot. In fact, I won't even get a raise because of the increase in insurance premiums. Let's start taking a look about the insurance change you recently adopted. As an employee, you asked me for more money towards my insurance. You asked me to trust the Garner app. Your administrators tell us this app is great without even testing it. I went on, you're not on it. My primary physician isn't on it. My son's primary physician on it. I reached out to the Garner app. They said no. So again, you ask and you ask and you ask for more. But what are you giving us? Thank you.
That's Rico, please.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to address the board and the community. My name is Beth Rico. I teach math to 8th graders across the street at Forest Park. This is my 2nd year in the district and my 16th as an educator. It's important for you to know that I absolutely love my job, and I have experienced my best 2 years of teaching here in Franklin. Currently, I'm celebrating with my students the great growth they've achieved on MAP tests over the school year. Besides my role as a teacher, I'm a very supportive member of this community by attending athletic events and plays. I pick up subbing jobs. I'm a member of the school improvement team, a mentor, and help wherever I can. I also served on the middle school experience team last year. And I also have family members in the district, one who is here tonight, Amelia Richards, who are going through the system. The reason I'm here to address you is the proposed salary schedule and to implore you not to accept it. According to a study done by Purdue University and GoBankingRates.com, the amount of money an individual needs to earn to be happy in the state of Wisconsin is $101,220 annually. As I am sure all of you know, educators make far below that amount. By no means am I expecting Franklin Public Schools to be able to bring salaries to this amount, because I know the undervaluing of teachers is a systematic national issue. But personally, as a 16-year educator, I'm making more than what the district says I'm worth, which is extremely demoralizing concept in itself. Since I am ahead of what the proposed salary schedule says I should make, I would not receive a longevity raise for 14 years. 14 years. I find it hard to believe that anyone in this room would find that acceptable or justifiable or would work for that. The proposed increase I would get is 2.44% below the cost of living. So with this and the increased cost of health insurance, every year I will be losing money. Every year. I am not a double income household. I live a very modest lifestyle, and still I can tell you with my salary plus the extra hours I work supervising and scoring athletic events, plus picking up every single subbing opportunity that's offered to me, in this economic climate, I am living paycheck to paycheck. If I continue without pay increases of at least cost of living, working for Franklin Public Schools will be unsustainable. I speak of my specific situation, but I know that this applies to many other FPS teachers as well. I'll be forced out of a job that is so important and rewarding that I am very successful in because I'm unable to afford a comfortable lifestyle, which shouldn't be acceptable to anyone. Please turn down this proposed salary schedule. If not, you'll be forcing out veteran educators who are the biggest reason we are a high-performing district. I quote you, Mr. Cromie, for your recent health insurance presentation. It is not the institution, it is the people who work in that institution who make it successful. The future of the community and its children depend on you. Please make the right choice.
Paul Dreyer, please.
Who is it?
Paul.
Hello again. 6 o'clock, Monday, my house for barbecue. Okay. First, I would like to address the frequent flyer comment made at the last board meeting. Yes, this is my 4th time speaking before the board, but as an educator here at Franklin High School for 33 years and a representative of the Franklin Public Education Association, it is my obligation to do so. In the proposed salary schedule, I'm going to make $1,000 more next year, plus a share of 2.1%. Subtract that from the $1,200 increase in health insurance premiums, and I am moving in the wrong direction. What does this salary schedule mean for me in the following years? Quite frankly, we do not know. Mr. Cromie said that the median salaries are subject to change every year. So let's say it didn't, and the CPI next year is 2%, and 1.8% of that is used up by the STEPS and master's degree movement that takes place by my colleagues. That means the rest of us will split what is left of 0.2%. Absurd. Name a profession in which you receive a minimal to no increase for 5 years. We all deserve an increase in salary every year. I work in a department that has seen all of its teachers leave twice in the last 4 years. Why? For better pay and treatment. Do you know which department has not had any turnover? I will tell you. Tech Ed. Again, why? Because they privately negotiate with the district and receive salaries that far exceed the rest of us. For a district that preaches equity, we are not practicing what we preach. Please do not approve the salary schedule tonight. Please do not separate teachers into categories. We should stand united. It encourages flight in our staff, not retention. Thank you.
Mrs. Sneed, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Patricia Sneed. I am one of those non-residents, but I am a Countrydale teacher and have been for 34 years. I come to you as an FPEA member and also a part of the board. On April 24th, the board meeting, the FPEA called the board to listen to our voices of the educators in the district when you took a look at the action of our health insurance. We appreciate greatly the actions you took that night when you voted 6-1 in favor of a plan, which was option 5, overwhelmingly chosen by the staff, over a plan, which was option 4, which seemed to be district leadership, which was strongly backed by them. But because, as many of you stated, you needed to hear the voices of the staff members. We also appreciated that district leadership listened to our call to include the voices of staff through presentations on the insurance in our buildings, where staff were able to give their input. In the same way, we were very heartened when we heard that the Better Place to Work Committee was being formed for staff to have an input on what makes for healthy working conditions, and many FPA leaders were a part of this team. However, we were deeply disappointed to hear that the proposed salary system is being presented as coming from the committee, when we understand that not everyone on this committee supports the proposal or even felt that their input was actually taken into consideration. As an association, we, of educators, we felt it was really important to ascertain if the proposal reflected the perspective of educators, so we decided to ask them. 175 of Franklin professional educators responded to the survey that we gave them. Question 1, does the proposed salary system make you more or less likely to stay in Franklin? A majority, 50% of Franklin educators said no, while only 16% said yes. I would also like to say that I do know that there are 8 teachers in Countrydale that are leaving. When asked if the new system was transparent and predictable, only 22%, less than a quarter, felt that that was the case, with the rest feeling somewhat unclear or completely unsure of how this system really works. As to the question of whether the proposal actually was responsive to what educators were looking for, 65%, basically a supermajority, gave a resounding no. Perhaps most important of all, 86%
far beyond the supermajority, said they felt this proposed salary system, did not value or respect the professional educators of Franklin for their contributions to the district. Based on the clear voice of Franklin educators, we call on the district to delay immediate action, revisit the salary system, and take into consideration the input of all committee members and, more importantly, Franklin educators. I'm almost done. We also call on the board to add at least 2 of its members to the district bargaining team in order to be a part of the salary discussions with FPEA, the certified representatives of the district's educators. Last month, you made it clear that your decisions must be informed by the voices of the staff. Tonight, we simply ask that you value our choices again.
Mayor, we have about 1 minute left.
Mary Karolevich, 8208 West Coventry Drive. I don't think I could say it any better than any of the other speakers. Thank you for your letter to the special education teachers and staff. I really appreciate that. I do believe that if the K-12 system were made up of 75% males instead of 75% females, that this would not be an issue at all. I did a little bit of research and I went to DPI. In 2010 school year, Franklin offered a low salary of $40,000. The average was $60,000. But your years of experience was 15.59, and the local experience was 1307. In 2017, Franklin's low salary was $45,000, and their average salary was $65,000. Your average contract, or your contract average of local experience, went down to 10.56, and the average total experience was 14.85. In the year 2024, Franklin's contract was $49,000. The average contract was $66,000, so a mere $6,000 in 14 years increase. But your local experience went down, once again, to 9.16 years, and your total experience went down to 13.83. In America, teachers can influence not only students, but the American standard of living. And this was shown back in 2011 by a Brookings Institute study that showed in 1970, an average teacher earned $54,000. In 1980, it went down to $42,000. And we've been trying to build it ever since then, 1980. They also, and I got this information from a very wonderful source who's now retired. He also showed me that Forbes did a study. Our teachers actually overpaid. If we paid a teacher $3 an hour for every student, and the average classroom was 25 students, and they worked from 8 to 3, Monday through Friday, that's 8 days, five days a week, 36 weeks, their cost or their pay would be $108,000 for a 180-day school year. And I know we will never get to that, and I know the teachers don't expect that either. But I do think they deserve to be respected and valued, and somebody's got to break out of this malaise and do something about it, and I think this district can do that. And I don't know how it could be done, but I do hope that you will, as Patricia said, you will consider your actions. You will consider getting more input from teachers across the board, and then reconsider the proposal as is, or a different proposal that will surely show them the respect that they deserve. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to move on to the consent agenda. I'm looking for a motion to approve the the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion was made by Mrs. Larson, seconded by Dr. Khan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Of note, I'd like to welcome Jan Nickel, the future principal at Countrydale Elementary for next year. Jan, thank you for being here tonight and welcome. School board calendar, school board self-evaluation work study, Tuesday, May 28th at the ECC at 6. FHS graduation, Saturday, June 8th, American Family Field at 4 o'clock. Franklin Forward Survey Resolution Workshop, Wednesday, June 12th, 2024 at the ECC at 6, and a regular Board of Education meeting, June 19th, 2024 at the ECC at 6. District Administrator update, Mrs. Bennon, please.
All right, good evening. Keep it short. I know we have a variety of things yet this evening, but this time of year is always a celebration of all the things that bring together the culmination of the end of the year. So starting tomorrow, our 5th grade has 2 days of outdoor adventures and learning where they all come together at Whitnell Park. So if anybody wants to stop by and see some activities, it's a nice opportunity to kind of break down I don't know, sometimes students get fearful of coming out of their elementary school into one bigger middle school, and it's one opportunity to start coming together. So thank you to a variety of our physical education teachers and other educators helping to organize tie-dye and archery and geocaching and rocketry and other cooperative games between all the students. Senior Honors Night is a week from tonight at the high school, honoring a variety of seniors. That's at 6:30 at the Saber Center. June 6th, we move into 8th grade promotion at Forest Park. That's at 7 p.m. The next day is our last day of school, a half day for our learners. So coming up on us real fast here. And then the following day, we have graduation at American Family Field at 4 p.m. for all of our seniors. And mixed in there is a variety of opportunities for our seniors to walk their previous elementary schools if they've attended Franklin throughout. And also a lot of our elementary schools do a really neat activity of a 5th grade walkout near the end of the year on the last day where they just walk the halls, the kids line the halls, and it's really kind of a neat culture experience for them stepping out of their elementary school into summer and middle school. Quickly after that, we turn around for summer learning. So June 17th, that starts at Forest Park Middle School, same place it was held last year, just over 700 students. I should say closer to 800 students, really. In the high school program, again, starting at the high school through that time. Our K-8 program runs through July 18th. We also have a variety of celebrations in the student services department. So often when I think of what I'm going to talk about tonight, I try to think of the things that we're celebrating, the things we're working towards. When I look back to last year, it was this meeting where we invited Katie Kirchner to be our parent liaison. I think that's a really exciting point, and Katie's been with us for a year now. I think doing a really nice job bridging communication between our department and between our families and helping us to grow and learn. So it was great to hear from Lily and Joey tonight, and hope that we continue to have a great experience that we can grow on. And when we aren't perfect, we work to improve. So we're very grateful for Katie's dedication and continuous positive perspective on helping us be better. Schools are finishing up their transition meetings right now also for our students with special needs. So Leo and his team have done a nice job this year of ensuring that those meetings are taking place at the end of the year. Caseloads are determined for the following school year, and that those leaders that get to work with that next group of students are reaching out to those families early on to try to ease that transition and just the fear that goes on with change just naturally in schools for our families. So we're appreciative to all the educators also that are putting in that time to make those phone calls or those connections this time of year. We started many parent engagement events this year. We've had a good turnout. We're hoping to continue to build those next year in a complete family series that not only reaches students or families of students with special needs, but also our community in other ways, maybe educating on drugs, online safety. So we're working to roll out that community engagement piece next year, but we're excited that we already had some opportunities this year. We had a good turnout, and that we can continue to bring families in for those. So a big special thank you also, like I said, to Leo Ekman, to Janine Bombian, who's our coordinator in student services, and Chelsea Wagner, who've really worked with the staff to set some goals and continue to move us forward. Thank you to our parents that have continued to speak out and make us aware of where we can be better, and have given us the grace and time to do that. I know I got to thank Tony Morrissey while he was here tonight, but it was really neat, and I mean that, to have a staff member say, I want to present to the board, and I want to talk about the connections I've made. And I think his passion and the students' passion spoke for itself. I want to thank the Better Place to Work Committee. Obviously, you've heard some comments from some members tonight. It has been a collaborative experience through 7 meetings. I'm appreciative to Molly, Rebecca, and Lindy, who will introduce themselves a little more in a few minutes, who have volunteered from that committee to be our presenters to everybody tonight. And the others that are in the room will have an opportunity to introduce themselves at that time. I know it hasn't been easy work, and there's obviously different emotion that goes behind it, but I appreciate that people have been dedicated to committing to representing all staff and trying to come together to make it better. It's not perfect, but it's working. It's a step forward and different than what we currently have. And then thank you also to our partnership with Franklin Health Department and the Volition. The tobacco posters are always interesting to see, and I appreciate that we added some student voice to it tonight, because in 1 or 2 sentences they can say better than most of us the effects or what they're thinking about or feeling pressure of when it comes to vaping or tobacco in their life. It's definitely something we see with students on an increased basis that we're battling every day in the schools, and I think more awareness we can bring and understanding to our community, the better we'll be. So thank you.
Thank you. Reports, presentations, and other board business. Better Place to Work Task Force. Ms. Bennon, please.
All right, so I'm going to invite anybody on the Better Place to Work Task Force if you want to move forward in the room, or for sure Molly, Rebecca, and Lindy, like I said, have graciously volunteered to present the information that the team worked towards. Was there full consensus in the room? We've heard tonight that there wasn't, and there wasn't always, and I think we were very honest at the start of this group that we're going to work to find something that starts to meet the ideal elements, which they'll outline in this presentation, which that team did come up with. And so we're hearing a variety of voices on it, but it has been an experience that, again, I've appreciated having about 20-ish people in the room. I've appreciated the joint leadership with Laura and Andy Cromie in this work, and the dedication, because this group came together, like I said, 7 times, hour and a half for free dinner, and collaborative conversation and candor. And that doesn't mean that we always all saw eye to eye, but that we could respect each other and the different views and leave the room continuing to come back to try to grow and get better. This committee will also get back together next year, revisit where we're currently at, and adjust where we feel we need to from input, depending on where everything ends for this year, and continue to just grow together. So on that, I don't need to say much more. I know I gave you the story at the last meeting of how we got to this group, beginning at this time last year, and what their voices. So please introduce yourself, and Jess will click away for you.
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Uchahowski. I am the 4K teacher at Robinwood Elementary.
Molly Mitchell. I am a 3rd grade teacher at Pleasant View Elementary. Lindy Reinders, music teacher at Robinwood.
Just to sum up a few things to get started before we get into the nitty-gritty, we formed a task force for the Better Place to Work Committee that had about 20 staff members from throughout the district, different buildings, different jobs, and we came together for about 1 meeting a month to discuss the needs going forward for a better place to work. These were the dates of the said meetings. And after we began, we sent out a survey to all staff members in the district that were able to pick their top needs for a better place to work for them. And a few of the high points that came out of that survey were the highlighted ones: PTO, predictable salary schedule, input on the district calendar, reducing the 16-hour requirements that teachers have, and catastrophe leave. And so to begin, we mapped out a lot of those areas to see where we can go and how we could get ideas started for the committee to work for, because we want this to be a better place to work. We are eager to get things started and know that this is just a starting point for stepping stones that we can hopefully help make a lot of our team members happy and going forward for a better place to work.
All right, 16 hours. So you saw on the survey that one of the areas that needed improvement was the 16-hour clarification. So just to make sure you understand what that means is there's a 16-hour additional outside of the normal school time that staff is required to put in to do professional development in a variety of different ways. Sometimes that's summertime workshops, sometimes that might be working in the evenings at their home, depending on what goals they've put in place for that year with their team, with their principal, or with their department district-wide. It's always been a little bit of an itch under some people's skin, like, why are we putting 16 hours in? Are you kidding me? Do you want to see how many hours I put in? Right? Like, those are the comments you hear. And we were saying them too. And then we had some clarification on what really that meant. It is part of the contract. It is part of the days, which was unbeknownst to lots of us. One thing that came out of this was clarity on exactly what our 190, what is it, 193, I think, days are and where they're allocated to what duties. And that was an awakening for all of us. So in all, when we presented that and talked about it back to staff, it was, oh, that's interesting, because we could take those 16 hours away, but then we're also taking hours away then, and then how does that affect salary? And, there's a whole nother, questioning area. So that was one area that we worked on, and checked that kind of off of our box. The next area that we're working on is district calendar input. Obviously, when we were meeting, that calendar had to be pushed out because of timelines and everything we all have to work on, and we know that. So that was a little bit of a, wait a minute, we wanted to get our voice in for this calendar. But moving forward, we're already starting to talk about calendars and dates and put together a subcommittee for next year. There will be a survey that goes out and asks for volunteers to do that. So definitely wanting calendar voice. Many years ago, we did have calendar voice, and that really helped. They would present, the district would present several calendars, some of you remember that, and then staff would vote on it. That was really helpful. Some of the areas of calendar, just, like leaves and the extended weekends and when PD is, those things that seem like maybe not a big deal, but they're big to the community, and they're also really large to the teachers and the staff that work here. Catastrophic leave. So this seems to be a no-brainer, right? Like, if someone's having a catastrophic situation in their family, we want to be able to contribute. Patricia, myself, we've worked here 30-some years. We have lots of sick time saved up. So if we see a teacher who needs that, or another staff member, we would like to contribute. And so there has been some language that has been put together that would allow for us to be able to donate depending on the situation, and depending, of course, that would be going through a committee through Human Resources. I think this is the biggest excitement from every single person I've talked to. Do people want more? Well, absolutely. I would love lots of PTO, right? But we do have PTO that has been put in front of us, and that's something that was really exciting that we've never had in this district. So what that would mean, existing right now, the current state, is I have my 10 sick days. One of those is a personal day, and in addition to, I have a personal day. That additional personal day disappears if I don't use it, and many people don't use it. Why, I can't understand, but many people don't use it. And the other one then absorbs into your sick day. So over the years, what's happened is, I need to take my kids up to Minneapolis for, a music competition because my sister's wedding was in the fall and I need to take 2 days off because I was the matron of honor. Like, those things happen. And it just creates this whole culture of like sneaking around and feeling not like we're respected, right? Like, you've heard a little of that. So bringing in PTO and making sure that we have at least a few additional days that we can use as personal time is where we're moving in the future. Would we want all of it? Well, absolutely. But then we did have quite a few committee members too that said, well, how would that impact? Like, we don't want to go forward and say, hey, 10 PTO days, and then have to retract because this place is a hot mess because we can't get anybody to sub, right? So dipping our toe into it and moving forward, there are 2 plans here that employees will be able to choose from, which again is wonderful voice and choice, not just this is what we're going with and this is what the committee decided, right? So you can take 2 PTO days and the sick days. You can take those back to back, but again, any of these PTO days have to fall within the criteria that we have now. not extended on a vacation that we already have, not on a PD day, not on a Friday in May, because those are all real hot days, right? And then something that we all talked about was, wouldn't it be nice if some people who don't take those personal days, who don't take, they just are here every day, not taking a personal day, not doing any of that, could we find a way to give them a monetary benefit back? So you can see in that first plan, up to 2 days, they may be paid out at the end of each school year, $150 a day. And then that would be for their PTO if they don't take that. Then there's also Plan 2, which is 4 PTO days and six sick days. So you can see that there's just a little bit of choice there. Some people say, yeah, I don't need that. I'm just going to be able to take my 2 PTOs, which I don't take anyway. But then the next year, say, oh, yeah, my daughter's graduating from college and my other one's graduating from grad school. I need to have these days off. Then you can play with that a little and have those days. People are excited about it. I'm excited about it. It's been a long time in coming.
All right, so I have the compensation framework piece of our presentation. This is obviously one of the largest areas of interest among the staff. It got the most votes in that survey that we did. And the committee did spend a great deal of time discussing this and examining many, many different viewpoints, what other districts did, other data. And as I said to staff when I presented to them, I have 2 things I always ask to keep in mind. Number one, that there is no compensation solution that we could have come up with this year that would possibly be perfect for everyone or meet every need of every staff member. But we do have some well-defined goals for what we're aiming for, and we think that we can create a step 1 towards those goals. And that's what we have for you today as a step 1. Our hope and intention is that this is just that first step and towards a framework in the future years as we continue to refine and expand on it that will meet the needs of most, if not all, of our staff in some manner. We also have a lot of slides of information here for you. So most of the questions do get answered if you just kind of hang tight and get through it. So what we have up there right now is our current compensation structure, if we could call it that. Most of us don't. And so basically there's a minimum salary for a new Franklin educator, not a new teacher, but just a new Franklin educator. And then also a minimum salary for a professional educator, someone with more experience. Then we have the program educators, people who are holding more leadership roles, and there's no minimum there, but those are negotiated. And then our system specialists, those would be our instructional coaches in the buildings or our interventionists. They would fall into that category. And again, no minimum salary is listed. So there's a bit of smoke and mirrors here that the staff would appreciate some more clarity on. So if we go to the next. What we reviewed in trying to get a handle on what is available out there in other districts, we looked at a variety of models, ladder schedules, merit-based pay, years of service milestones, stipend-based pay, just CPI, retention bonuses. And we debated the pros and cons of all of these things, X'd out some of them, and held others up. And that allowed us to arrive at what are our goals in trying to create something. And these are the elements of our ideal state of a compensation framework, something we're working towards in future years and taking the first step forward with this proposal. So we want it to be transparent. We want it to have some acknowledgement of degree obtainment among the staff. We would like it to be predictable. Benchmarks to recognize years of experience as an educator, not just in Franklin schools, but overall. An understanding of the market and that different positions have a different market value based on what's available. We also wanted to ensure that we are market ready. We would like educators in the district to feel that they are not getting compensated unfairly compared to neighboring districts. So we want to make sure we are comparable to those. And then also, of course, a stability for this framework. We don't want to create a program that we cannot continue with year after year after year. We want something that has that stability built in. And right now, we also have a menu of stipends that staff earn for extra efforts that they make, if it's a SIT team or perhaps like a science lead, or if they have an American Board certification. Those stipends are always given to them on top of their salary. We wanted to continue with that recognition for those efforts. So taking that ideal state, then Mr. Cromie was able to access data through a software program that most districts are participating in. Some districts have agreed to standardize their data in that program, making all of the data comparable. Not every district has gone through that work. As I understand it, it was a tremendous lift to get all of the data into that sort of framework so that it could be used. And so he was able to access data from the districts you see listed here and in the different categories you have here. So general education teachers would be the column of subjects underneath that, elective teachers, specialists, and then special education. We hope that in future years, as this data becomes more and more valuable to districts, that other districts in the area would also start submitting their data, and we would be able to pull from a more detailed set. So taking the data from that, we were able then to, or he was able, I should say, he did this work for us, put that together and get us to the next slide, which is the proposed compensation structure at the moment. You will see horizontally that we have the 4 categories mentioned in the previous slide. And then across those horizontal bands are differently colored longevity bands. So you have in the first one 0 to 5 years, after that 5 to 10 years, and they keep jumping every 5 years. We also have listed the average and the median salary in that market sample that he was able to take in those longevities, and related to whether a teacher has a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. We provided the average as a point of comparison, but we are not using that in calculating staff salaries. The proposal is to use the median because it gets rid of the outliers. And so it is a more true measurement of what is out there in neighboring districts. So, you could pick anything you'd like and say if you are a physical education teacher with 10 years experience and a bachelor's degree, that is where your median salary should fall. By median salary, we mean that is the baseline that you should be making. And so then from here, going into next year, not quite yet, Jess, sorry. That's okay. From here, moving into next year for new salaries, staff would find their spot on this chart where they are currently and say, okay, am I making that median salary? If they aren't, they would be given the median bump, meaning they would come up to that point so that they are at least making that much. And then from there, they would also say, okay, am I getting compensated for my master's degree or not? They would move over for the master's degree compensation if they qualify for that. And then additionally, let's say next year you move yourself into a new 5-year band, you would then move over to the median salary for that longevity. So there would be a median bump and then a longevity bump that would happen. And that is how you would get to your base salary that you can expect for the year. One thing we are aware of in this framework, like I said, it is step 1, is that there is not a consistent increase from each 5-year band to the next. And so that is obviously something we would like to improve upon in future years, not something that we could accomplish in this first step in year 1, but definitely something we're aware of, and that there should be an expectation that you can see that increase is regular and expected. Now you can move to the next slide, Jess. So in our first year of implementation, looking at the information we have of staff that we currently have, Mr. Cromie was able to calculate what this means. And so the median adjustments, those that will make a move based on the fact that they are not currently at least making that much. There will be 90 moves in the district, and that would result in 27% of our staff getting a median bump and getting an average increase of about $3,500. Additionally, there would be longevity moves based on our current staff to get to that median in the longevity band that you belong in. And there's 57 moves across the district right now for that. 24 of them have an increase that's an average of 3,200, so that's 7% of our staff. And then what will happen after the bucket of money is taken and the median jumps are made for all the staff in the district, the longevity jumps are made for all the staff in the district, then whatever remains in that bucket is going to be distributed among all staff, whether they have received a median or a longevity bump or not. So equally among all staff, then there will be the CPI increase, which at the moment, based on what we know, and our numbers would be calculated at 2.44% for each staff member. And that will be calculated based on their new salary after the median and longevity jumps. I think you can go for it.
All right. As representatives of this committee, we know that there was a lot of hard work and a lot of uncomfortable conversations that come with this topic that we know is not going to make everybody happy immediately. But our biggest goal was to provide something that could give staff members a view of where they could potentially go in the future, and also something that is manageable and sustainable for the district's future as a whole. So we do know that this is hopefully just a starting point for the Better Place to Work Committee and compensation in all areas that do make everyone happier and everyone wanting to stay and make the district a better place to work. Mm-hmm. So we are asking you tonight to vote yes so that we are able to have this point to start and continue our work year after year to go forward and make this a better place to work.
Thank you. I have something to say, but we'll take questions as well. I've been on this board for 5 years now. Soon after I was seated, probably before and certainly after, there was an uneasiness in some educators in the district. Teacher retention had become an issue. It isn't just an issue in Franklin Public Schools or in the Southeast or in the whole of Wisconsin, but nationwide. What staff overwhelmingly asked for was a transparent, predictable, and stable compensation structure based on tangible data with acknowledgement of degree obtainment and recognition for years of experience. One of the most impressive things about Mrs. Bennon's entry plan into the district 2 years ago was her ideas about teacher retention. When she approached the board a year ago to suggest the formation of the Better Place to Work Task Force, the board was optimistic about its possible outcomes. I'd like to thank all staff members, both teachers and administration, that participated in this task force. You have put yourself out there and should be lauded for your courage, perseverance, and collaboration. You have come up with a framework that is a giant step forward for Franklin Public Schools, and your paid time off choice plan and catastrophic leave plan are great things to try moving forward. Is it a perfect plan that everyone is thrilled with? Of course not, but it was a collaborative effort with parameters of a balanced budget.
No.
The work of the Better Place to Work Task Force moves Franklin Public Schools forward. It is budget neutral based on the budgeted CPI, and I hope the board will join me in endorsing the work of the task force, especially this year, but also moving forward and reconvening next year. Thanks. Does anybody have any questions? Linda, please.
Can you go back to the districts that were part of the database for comparative purposes? What kind of pay systems do they have in place? Do they have ladders? Do they have pay for performance? Do you know what's going on in Oconomowoc and Shorewood and the districts that are up there?
I do not know exactly what each of them are doing. I know the vast majority of districts do not have any formal compensation plan in place.
You don't know for a fact, though. You just.
I do not know for a fact, correct.
So we're not really sure how comparable the averages are. I mean, they're average, but
we took a look
at
every person inside of those systems, what subject they teach, how many years they've been an educator, and what they make.
Okay. Also, can you go to the impact slide, numbers that are impacted? So you talk about the medium adjustments and longevity adjustments. Where does the change for attainment of the master's degree, how many changes are associated with that?
That number I don't have. I simply took a look at the bands and people who made a median jump. So at this point, we took everybody with where they are from an educational standpoint, meaning number of total years of service that we have, and whether they have a bachelor's or a master's or something more than a master's, whether that's 2 or a PhD, and we slotted them in here. So at this point, we still have to, in order to make this work, see if there's anybody that has a master's move, because we stopped charting those really after Act 10, and that was not part of the compensation model, so no need to collect that data. So that's something we still have to do to make sure we have that.
And so you don't really know, I mean, could the pot change then in terms of whether 2.44 would remain the same, since you haven't really identified those moves?
Well, the pot and 2.44% are two different things. So the pot is the pot of money. 2.44 is what remains after we've made median moves and longevity moves. Currently, that remaining fund sits at about 2.63% versus the 2.44 based on some resignations and retirements that have still happened. So that'll continue to adjust. But it certainly will change as we find out that people have masters, because I'm sure that at least one person has obtained a master's over the last 10 years that this data has been collected. So that person will get slotted in here with that change, and then we'll make an evaluation of whether they need to make an adjustment or not. It's possible that they don't make an adjustment. It's possible that they do make an adjustment based upon where they would slot by number of years, and then move to the masters compared to where they currently are slotted.
So that's a whole number of moves that aren't accounted for.
So the masters we haven't collected in 10 years. The district didn't recognize it after Act 10, so that would be the one piece that would have to be adjusted in here yet. And that would be part of a survey that would go out to staff once we have next steps set to gather that, and that, yes, that will adjust the bucket. But it won't be as big of adjustments as the pieces that have already been moved. But yes, it'll come out of that bucket. Couldn't calculate it, don't have it.
And what does this mean? You say longevity is 57 moves required, and then you have 24 that have an increase.
Yep, so 57 people are moving from 0 to 5 to 5 to 10, or 5 to 10 to 10 to 15. Only 24 of them do not have a salary that meets that move. So 24 of them will have an increase to that salary because they've moved to a new 5-year band. The other 33 are already exceeding that salary that is in that move band. So they will not have an adjustment just based on longevity.
And that doesn't happen in median adjustments. They're all below. Yes.
The 24 would have been below median after that longevity move, so they're getting adjusted.
Right, but I'm just saying that a point above that, the median adjustments, that they're all are going to go up 90. All the moves are 90. All of them will go up on average.
The median adjustments, yes, 90 will have an increase in their salary, and then 24 for longevity will have an increase in their salary, if I'm understanding your question.
None of them are going down, is that correct?
Nobody's going down, and nobody will go down in future years, and nobody's staying the same.
I have a very tiny question back on slide 20.
Which one is that?
Two back.
Oh, thanks.
The category, yeah.
Thank
This is just from someone who reached out to me. I just wanted to clarify that the speech and language pathology actually belong in the specialist category.
Yep.
And you'll
we
correct
added
that in the final.
Board write-up. That's in there.
Perfect.
Noted
I
that.
just wanted to clarify.
Yep, it was calculated with that data in the specialist, and then in putting them on this particular slide, they weren't sped, but all the data is calculated as a specialist.
Thank you.
Can I just ask real
Please.
quickly? So I have a neighbor who was a teacher and is now doing something else. And she said they really were looking at this, I think she called it steps and lanes or something before COVID, and then it just kind of went away. So I think this is really a remarkable, step from what it used to be. But can you speak to what maybe 2 goals would be for the next, is there going to be another iteration of this, or it's ongoing, and what would you be looking at?
What the committee discussed was that we need to have something to start with and live with and see what happens to a certain extent. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So they want to see what does happen in the next year with that, and then also taking that feedback, and then some of the things that we know are lacking in this, such as the consistent jumps across longevity, or making sure that, there's equalization between the different categories or things like that. So taking some of that feedback and those pieces that we know are not perfect and continuing to work towards them.
And hopefully we can have more data from other school districts, getting to what you were talking about, Ms. Wiskowski, about, you know, there's only certain school districts there, and some of them don't even border Franklin, right? Like, so we would like to know, you know, get more people to share that information so that there is more competitive. That was one of those areas that we wanted to look at, like competitive rates with everyone else. So hopefully there will be more school districts that will share their data and be part of that.
And one piece we did forget to mention previously was also that each year that data will be re-pulled and the numbers will be readjusted to the new medians that we find in that data. So it will consistently be competitive among the data that we have.
So that will not look like that next year. Even if we did nothing and just sat here, that would all change next year depending on what the new salaries were in those districts, and ours included.
Angie, please.
One question that I had after the presentation I attended that I think would probably benefit the group to hear the answer to is just the idea that I like that this is driven by market realities, right? Like we exist within a larger milieu that we do not have the ability to independently change. But my question was, to what extent do we actually drive the medians, right? Like we can't pretend that we are contributing to that data. So how will the medians inevitably grow if we're all just looking at the medians? And I think you answered I can't remember who answered my question, but can a math person address my question about the medians?
So like if every district is looking at the median?
Well, just the idea that what drives the medians to grow over time?
Well, just that we already know that 2.44% will be on top of every salary in this district. Actually, Andy said tonight it's 2.63 approximately at right now, right? So already every salary in this district, whatever you're making after those adjustments, is going up by approximately that 2.6, right? We'll have that exact number after annual meeting, third Friday count, all of those things. So everybody's salary is already going up from that, not aggregate, which is already going to adjust what these zones look like just for Franklin. You would assume that other districts are going to be adjusting too, because if we look back at what other districts have done over the years, I can't name any that have had like flat zero increase of any. I'm sure there are some, like don't quote me on it, but most have received increases relatively in the same kind of percentile. So it's going to naturally go, it's going to go up, not naturally, but because there's raises across districts.
And I believe I asked a question that should the median for some inexplicable reason go down, we would not go below the median of previously published, right?
So the answer to that right now is yes, because we would build it just as it is. Part of what the committee would probably talk about is, hey, we probably don't want that to happen. So what I anticipate, should the board approve this, is next fall. I think all that data from those districts comes in around the middle of November, so probably by middle of December. Like we could have what 25, 26 would look like. So we can take a look at it side by side, or say, take a look at what did the salary increase by percent in every cell or dollar amount in kind of every one of those, and make that determination if something went down, to say, no, we don't want that. So that's really just for us to like chart that the cell is not following exactly the median, or somehow indicate. We don't necessarily have to have it in that document, but internally, so that we kind of understand how we're modifying it.
When I look at this, I fall back on the motto of somebody who I can't remember, but that perfection is the enemy of progress. And so I do think that this is a step in the right direction.
Linda, please.
So, I mean, it's such a mathematical driven model that, and it works kind of this year because you have money to work with. You got the 2.4 left after you make the adjustments, but there's no guarantee that that will happen next year. I mean, and it's sustainable only because you fix the pot of money and it's just moving it around as far as who gets it based on the model. But isn't it still very highly unpredictable? Because we don't really know.
Are you asking if the model's unpredictable,
Yeah.
or the amount of money going into it unpredictable?
Well, I know we tell you what the amount's gonna be that goes into it, right? whatever we say the pot, is whatever that percent is going to be determines the pot of money, and then you work the model. And because you have the 2.4 that everybody's going to get, that's reasonable. It's not what everybody wants, but it's something. And that could be quite small. How do you see that number changing year to year?
Well, it's based on CPI, so currently CPI is tracking somewhere in the mid-3s for next year. I imagine, given the fact that the federal government hasn't lowered the interest rate, and they've had multiple opportunities this year to do that, so CPI is still continuing to track relatively high compared to many other terms. But one of the questions was asked during the committee meeting, what happens if there's like $0 to ever implement a raise? So what do we do that particular year? So we'd still try to make median moves, we'd still try to make longevity moves, and we'd still try to put money in for master's moves. I can't guarantee that that will happen. But regardless of what system you have put in, even our current one, we can't guarantee that every year there's going to be anything ever. So regardless of the system that you choose, that I will not guarantee that and put my job on the line to say, yes, I'm 100% sure that that'll happen.
Is it
because I don't know?
Is it fair to assume that this year, since it's sort of a reset, would be the largest number of adjustments?
I would say from median adjustment size of $3,500, probably yes. I don't want to say, like, I would like to run it a few years and see like what actually happens to the median, because it's possible that next year there's 100 median moves, they just happen to average like $1,200 versus the $3,500. So I don't know. Ultimately, like, if it works in keeping staff, longevity should become predictable over a period of time as 20% of your staff move into the new band every year, right? It's 5 years divided by 100% by 5. Will that happen? I guess I don't 100% know that either, but I think you hit the nail on the head. If we're looking for perfection, we're never going to reach that, so.
Well, there's unpredictability even with the current system that is not so clearly defined. There's a lot of unpredictability there of exactly, where do I fall in this kind of vague system and how do I make a move or anything like that. This new system seems to allow at least a little bit more clarity, a little more transparency around how do I make a move, what should I do to make a move, and where can I see my future.
Can I make a being a son of educator, I have seen, and I'm a firm believer that the biggest asset our district has is the teachers. And thank you for each and every one of you guys. The district and the community can't ever pay you enough for the job which you guys do. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, to be honest. You guys are amazing, each and every one of you guys. The stories which when I hear from, especially at parents or even regular parents, of your contribution to the kids is, you are the biggest contributor in the success of our community as such. So thank you. And with that being said, I also understand that since acting, a lot of teachers have been disappointed, but I think each and every board member, I can't speak on everyone's behalf, but at least I thought about this very seriously. And I wanted to ensure that our teachers have the best platform to succeed, just like our students, because if our teachers are successful, that translates into our student success. So at least what I'm seeing is that there is a positive move in the right direction, which is actually being spearheaded by the teachers. So thank you for the Better Place to Task Force. Thank you.
Oh, Mary, so you had a question.
I think at the end of the school presentation, there was some mention made that there's going to be perhaps a smaller group that's going to be looking at support staff and office staff, many of whom have been here a long, long time and have the same issues with compensation and predictability. Is that going to be going forward, and are we going to be getting a similar presentation? Probably not as elaborate, but is that in the works?
I can't speak completely because I don't have I'm not part of that, but I do know that there is a subcommittee for EAs and support staff that's working separate. There issues we found like 2 months in were so very different that they needed more focused attention to be worked on in the smaller group. We already had another little subcommittee meeting yesterday just to kind of get things on that list that weren't some of that heavy lifting, and to talk about the future of next year when it comes to PD and wellness and other areas that were on that list, just to kind of get that started, because, you know, the longer it sits, the harder it is to get that rock to roll. So that was already a little bit of a meeting. So yes, moving forward, there will be continual meetings, and it might ebb and flow with the people that participate, who feel they should or they can or they can't for whatever reason. I would think that there will be another survey that would go out asking for more participation, because the more voices we hear and the more that we hear everyone and what they need, the better we can make a decision for everyone, not just for certain people.
Yeah, I can say that we absolutely will be doing this for our other staff groups as well. We actually recently sent out a survey to try and encourage more people to participate next year because that team was smaller than we would have liked, and we want more voices at the table. So excitedly, we have a couple more people that have expressed interest. So they will absolutely be reconvening in September.
And please.
So I appreciate what you were just saying about how you're already looking to next year and how, you know, getting that rock rolling, I think is what you said. I think this shows a lot of progress from, you know, where we were or where we've been the last few years. And I think it's important to acknowledge that there will be opportunity for further change as we can continue to work together. I'm grateful to the task force who has given up a lot of your time. And I can't imagine it was only because of the free dinner. And, you know, just that you have put in that time, you've represented your staffs, and have come up with something to give us a starting block to continue to grow on for the next, you know, into the future. So thank you for that.
Go ahead.
So in recognition of both the process and the product, I move that we approve the proposed plan as presented by the Better Place to Work Task Force.
I have a question. Well, you can make the motion.
Motion was made by Dr. Beer, seconded by Mr. Persky. You had a comment on
Yeah,
that?
so how do we ensure then that this comes back to the board? And I understand it lives in the employee handbook. Is that where this schedule resides? And how do we ensure that it comes back to the board a year from now?
So it'll
And
live
that
in
this
the
change
employee.
continues?
Sure, it'll live in the employee hub and can continue to give updates during the district administrator update, the reports I do for the board, and if the board requests an update, then we can do an update.
We would hear from the Better Place to Work Task Force next year as an update.
If you,
I'd like to.
Sure, we will come back next May to present where they're
So
at.
for sure then wouldn't we want to hear earlier, since this is a budget drive? Well, I guess it doesn't.
That's kind of what I was saying, like, when you say you want an update, we'll bring an update, or do you want us, like, the committee to let you know when it feels like they're at that point? Like, this committee started out with, it's maybe gonna take 3 meetings, and it took how many meetings?
7.
7 meetings, right, up to like the week before they started meeting with their schools. So I'm not saying it in a sketchy way to say we're not gonna come back, we'll come back, we're open and transparent, despite and in spite of all. But I just don't know if that's May or if that is in April. So I'm just being honest about where we're gonna be at in the process. But if you want it in May, we will come in May. That's what I'll put
Could
on
we
our
just have
calendar.
it sometime before the beginning of next school year?
Hmm?
And could we also have an update on the master's degrees
Oh, yeah,
obtained?
just the number.
Sure. All right, motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, 7-0. Looking forward, survey results. Thank you very much. All the teachers who participated. Franklin Forward survey results, school perceptions. Bill, please.
All right, thanks for having me tonight. My job is to take you through the results of your community survey. Again, Bill Foster with with school perception, so we can, who's running this thing? Who's a clicker? All right, Jessica, you're on, so give her a go. So your report tonight is organized really in three primary areas. Everything that was in the survey is in the report, so when the board scratches their head a month from now and said, what did that survey actually say? There are screenshots of the actual survey, so that creates the context for the responses, so that's important. We will look at the demographic information, then slice and dice the results to try to make sense of it for the board. So again, school perceptions, we've been around for more than 20 years, and now we're north of 1,000 community surveys like yours, and actually several that have been done for the Franklin community. Your survey had a deadline of April 22nd. We had over 3,166 responses, which I was kind of wondered if that was good. I looked back in 2018 and you had 1,527, so you blew it away. I guess that's good. I gave you a 27.7% response rate. I think the last time I was here, the board asked what's typical. My answer was about 18%. You again are a gold winner there. From a statistical standpoint, it gives us a margin of error of under 2%, 1.77%. So you could get another 1,000 respondents, it might drop down to plus or minus 1.5%. So you've got enough data to have confidence in the results. When I look at this slide, I always go to the top. I want to make sure our seniors are well represented, which they are. They're actually overrepresented in the data. So I think we're around 17%, but when it comes to taking surveys and voting, by the way, older folks tend to turn out to do that, where younger folks tend not to take surveys nor vote. So it's skewed a little older, but we like that. Is your primary residence in the district? 91% said yes. I think this is on a Mac, so it's kind of doing some funky things, but there were 9% that said no, which raises the question, who are these people taking our survey that don't live in our community? And the answer is primarily really two areas. One is some staff. All staff were invited to take it. Not all staff live in the Franklin community, as well as parents who choose to open enroll into the district. And in both those cases, those folks can't vote. So we remove them from the funding support question because they're not residents. Whoop, you skipped too far.
Sorry.
Back one. You're quick.
You guys
quick.
probably should just pick a new person. It's been a while.
You're doing pretty good, though.
I will back away.
We had 10% of our sample were employees and 51% were parents. Perfect. We had one question on communication. How would you like to receive your information? Here we had, we took out staff completely because we've got our own ways to talk to staff. We then broke it into two groups. Parents are in the blue line, and we call them the purple people, the non-parent, non-staff. They are in, they're in purple. So for our purple people, the number one was the Franklin Focal, 69%, which apparently they read. 2/3 are reading that. Then it drops down to the website all the way down to 25%. Then it kind of goes down from there. And as far as parents go, 61% said send me an email, and 54% will read the school electronic newsletter. I think the board asked if we could put a question in the survey having to do with how aware are you of Franklin Forward before the survey. Again, we broke it into three subgroups, the first being staff. 2/3 of staff were very aware, with another third somewhat aware. As far as our parents, they're kind of split, about a third. Actually, middle was kind of somewhat aware at 44%. And our purple people, the non-parent, non-staff, they were kind of almost half were somewhat aware, and then almost half were not aware at all. Again, the information that was in the survey, there's two slides that kind of create the context about the challenges of the district, including aging building systems. You've got some enrollment growth, and the second slide is some other issues. And we get to the question, would you support the district pursuing a referendum to update our schools? Again, we broke it into these three mutually exclusive subgroups. The first being staff was at 80% saying yes. Parents were close behind at 78%. And 49%, a plurality, not a majority, but really, really close, of the non-parent, non-staff said, yeah, I'll support something. This isn't necessarily to say they're gonna support everything, but they'll support something, so we've got a plurality of all groups supporting something in the capital or facilities area. Again, the information that was in the survey describes this recommended plan that really had 3 legs to the stool. The first being the $20.2 million to address buildings and grounds needs. Again, breaking it into those 3 groups. The staff were in at 87%, pretty strong support. Parents are at 77%, and our purple people, by the way, they're the most important group because they get the most votes. So as a board, as you hear a lot from the parents, you don't really hear from the non-parent, non-staff, so this is kind of their voice being heard tonight. 57% say, yeah, I'd support an investment of $20 million to update buildings and grounds. The second leg of the stool talked about a new elementary school. We described it both in text as well as a nice PRA image where that would go. And we then asked, do you support replacing the elementary school at $41.7 million? Here you can see the staff drop down to 2/3, still a strong majority. 41% of parents versus 37% saying no. But our purple people kind of switched. They went from, they're at 30% yes to 51% saying no. So they're not overly anxious to do that. And then the third leg of this stool is the recommended plan as it relates to the investment at the high school. That came out to $123.1 million. And again, the staff is on board at 73%, parents at 71%. And our purple people, the non-parent, non-staff, they're a little more excited about the high school than the elementary school, but we're approaching that 49% for the no's there. So then we wrapped it up, and we explained what the corresponding tax impact of a $185 million referendum would be. Again, we broke it into the 3 groups, the first being staff. And the staff is in at 71% yes, 20% no. Now, just to pause on the staff is really important because they not only talk to parents every day, but they talk to their friends and neighbors. I always say you can't write enough press releases to overcome what the staff is saying. They're very, very important, but from a voting standpoint, they don't get a lot of votes. They're important, but they're not important at the same time. Parents are representing probably about 30% of your community. And they're supporting the proposed plan at 64% yes with 21% no, so better than 3-to-1 support from those parents. And then we go to our purple people, the non-parent, non-staff, and they're at 31% supporting the proposed plan with 55% saying no, I would not support it. So to help you make sense of that, what we do is we do a weighted analysis of that. So basically, for the sake of this, we take the staff out completely. They just don't have a lot of votes. We assume that about 30% of the Franklin community are in fact parents and 70% are the non-parent, non-staff group. So with those assumptions, if that's true, and that's probably pretty darn close, if the election were held today, you'd end up at about 41%. So there's probably not support for doing that whole thing right now. We'll get to discussing the options, but we had a few more questions in the survey, and that was the additional high school project that would invest $24 million to expand the referendum for doing kind of the second phase of the high school. And as you can imagine, as the cost goes up, support goes down. Very rarely has we ever done a survey where support goes up as the cost goes up. So no surprise, the staff support dropped to 55% to 28%. The parent support dropped to 51% with 30% saying no, and our non-parent, non-staff, their support dropped from 31 to 24% with 61% saying no. And doing the math, I'm a math guy, so we ended up at 32.1%. So we dropped another 8% of support by proposing that second phase. We only had one question on overall satisfaction, and there you ended up better than our comparison set. When I look at this, by the way, I always kind of look at the neutral and above. So it's pretty positive. So you averaged out at 7.4. So we did a survey, so I always ask myself, what did we learn? We learned that the Franklin scored or the respondents scored the district above average on the overall satisfaction, and then a majority of parents and staff respondents support the district pursuing a facilities referendum, and really with 49%, again, a plurality but not a majority of non-parents, non-staff, saying, yeah, we need to do something. But we also learned that if the election were held today, the proposed $185 million plan would not likely be supported. So I wrote the next steps, and actually if I wrote this again, I'd probably flip them. The bottom one, there is enough support to consider doing something. And we saw that in the building maintenance area. We also saw that in the question about can we do something. We were pushing towards or over that 50% line there. But you probably need to consider reducing the cost and scope of the proposed plan. And it might make sense to focus on updating certainly the buildings and grounds, where we saw a majority support for that, and some sort of investment at the high school at this time in an effort to lower the cost to make the tax impact more tolerable. So from that, I'll answer questions on anything you like. Yes, ma'am. Please.
Do you have any data sort of breaking down that population 70-30? Did you apply that 70-30 breakdown of the population to any of the questions about each part of the three-legged stool? In other words, you gave us, if we were to apply the results based on our population, what % would support it? Did you apply that test to the individual questions, and if not, can you?
I can. The only thing was we didn't associate tax impact at that level. So we can do that, but it's a little looser. But you can kind of see for the buildings and grounds, it will be over 50% because the non-parent, non-staff was already at 51%.
And what
but I
was
can
it
do
for the
that.
high school?
Yeah. Pardon me?
Can you just go back to what the results were for the high school question?
The additional or the
No.
main?
The main.
No.
One more setback.
You really need to get a new person on.
Wait a minute.
Now you're
Go
too
forward.
far.
Went too far.
There we go.
One
No.
more.
No?
One more.
Two more.
There you go. Yeah. So you're at 34%. So at the entire amount, you're probably going to be, I'd say 42 or 43%. But I can do that math for you.
Please, Mary.
So it seems a little bit of not a dichotomy, but just saying that a lot of people didn't know about this, and so they're getting their information simply from the survey rather than some of Chad's videos or a walkthrough. I mean, it just seems like education about this and saying, this is our future, these are our future doctors, auto mechanics, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir, of course, but I mean, educating people, how do we get to them so that they can understand why this is so crucial?
That's not his job.
It is a challenge that every district is dealing with, especially bigger districts. So if you have an open house, you'd have to literally get, eventually 10,000 people to come. And that's not going to happen. So, and we also see readership in the local paper dropping. However, there is obviously more social media things going on, but it's a big challenge. It really is a big challenge for everybody. So I don't have the golden bullet for that one.
Right, but I mean, from your job and your expertise, is there not a conflict, but again, just a natural result of people not knowing and then voting the way they voted?
Yeah, it's the more they know, not if they know that they don't necessarily say, now I understand, now I'll support you. It might be a now I understand, I won't support you. But I think generally you always want to be explaining your plan, explaining the benefits of your plan. And again, that's why staff's so important, because they are talking to people. But it's a big challenge.
This is, there's obviously some art in what you do, but if those results Mary was talking about were, are they similar to other places? I assume they are fairly similar in that people are, there are a lot of people that are unaware generally.
Yeah, I'd say in terms of awareness of what you're doing, I think you guys are actually doing a really good job.
And in terms of the feeling good about the school district, does that change the math in terms of?
It helps. So there is, in our research, we do find correlation between overall satisfaction and referendum support. If people have been in their bonnet about something, whatever it is, they tend not to support. If they're generally satisfied and happy, they're more likely to support.
So that's factored into this.
Yeah,
that's factored into your.
There's definitely a correlation there. But then you get down to what every district is dealing with is costs are gone up so dramatically from even 5 years ago.
Next question.
Yeah, please, Maxim.
Do you have the data with the MPS recently passing the referendum to yes? How did they score, or did they do the survey before? Do you have any information on that?
On your specific survey?
No, MPS. I know MPS has recently passed.
Oh, MPS?
Yeah.
Oh, I have no idea. I didn't work with MPS. That's
and my next question is that with the high school, I know that questions had breakdown that will you support only a part of it? Like a CT, I think question, I don't remember. Can you put out that slide to how much?
We didn't break out the components of the high school. We did that one. Yeah, that one we did. The second one.
Keep going. Please see a map.
I passed that.
No, you gotta go up.
The CTE is part of the big high school project. It wasn't broken apart.
Yeah, we didn't test the elements of this plan. We just said, here's the plan.
Which I think we did for a specific reason.
We talked about that through the high school visioning sessions, and then also when we were in that December retreat where we talked about and the board said, move forward, like that aspect of if we just took the CTE that's around kind of the 4 or 5 area-ish, Nick's here would be able to better answer, he's the architect of the group, and to go to the middle of the building, this was a project that works north-south, and you're relocating space to then create the space that becomes the CTE area. So to just say, like, let's just take that middle part, that's removing like gym and touching other spaces. If you're not building the other part, you can't repurpose a space. Nick, anything to add to that?
No, that is correct. And if you recall, in our December session, we kind of talked about tying the academics and the athletic pieces together into a cohesive package. So yes, there is construction logistics aligned with it as well, but we were also looking at a little bit more comprehensive improvement to the building. So that's a little bit of what drove us to test that piece as what we call phase 1 at the high school.
Andrew, please.
I'm going to make a statement, and then you tell me whether it's accurate. It's tempting to want to take aspects of this survey to say that our survey results aren't true, but probably the results we have are actually representative of how our community is going to vote.
Yes. You might not like it, but yes, the data is very, very predictive. The data is predictive 94% of the time on the last 300 projects.
Like we can talk about people liking the district, or we might be able to educate them more, but it's
very,
they're not going to budge much.
Yeah, it's easier to move them down than yes, or in support. So typically we haven't seen, every once in a while there's an anomaly, but very rarely are you able to, especially a larger community, you're not able to move them dramatically because you just can't get their attention.
So that was, I'm going to kind of follow up on Mary's question, which is now kind of following up in your question. Where we are right now, we could put on all the fantastic education about the project to the whole community. We could go out and stand on street corners every day. No matter what we do, it's probably not going to change the overall data.
Not for the entire plan. Not that you shouldn't do that. You should do absolutely everything you can do. Yeah, but no, are you going to be able to move that many people into, oh, now I see the light and I'm going to support you? I don't think you're going to do that.
Linda, please.
I mean, maybe it's pretty simple. The number is just too much. It's just, I mean, that's the data they had to work with,
Mm-hmm.
and it's too much.
It'd be interesting to know, though, what aspect that would, we don't have a threshold number, and I think we asked you about that. Like, at what point would you start supporting it? Because just looking at it, it looks like there's pretty good support for taking care of what we already have, and maybe some support for the high school project, but it's harder to suss out because it was surveyed in conglomerate.
Yep, that's right.
And I think we said that because everybody will pick and choose. I like a pool, but I don't like this.
Was there any trends among people? Like, if they was there like a population of people who were like excited about the high school but didn't like the other things? Do you know what I mean? Or do they tend to vote similarly across all the?
They're pretty similar, and we can only look at that quantitatively by the demographics we have. So you could look at it really by age,
Okay.
And that sort of thing. But we didn't see anything that was any anomalies flying around.
Is there a way to, it seems like the elementary school is something that people won't support. Is moving toward the high school and the $20 million for our best option? Or should we, or should we start over? That's the.
Well, I think that's not the $64,000 question. That's the $100+ million question. But I think that's the next step is to think about what you could do. And I do think logically that high school needs an investment. Arguably, you're behind there, and you'd like to start doing it. The question is, how do you phase that? I think how do you break it into something that could be, how do you eat the elephant one bite at a time? How many bites can we get to get it done, and can that be done cost effectively and from an architectural standpoint, where it kind of makes so you don't end up with a miscombobulated building when you're done. And I think that's the challenge.
The presentation which we had, is it worth it to, for example, if a committee member is asked, okay, after looking at the survey results, that if we don't do the elementary school, we knew that elementary school is a specific pocket of population which will be supporting not the entire one to begin with. But will it be worth it to look at addressing this question is that since the district doesn't have different sections, district is managing the entire district. So the expense to maintain that old building, which is not up to date down the road, how much it will translate into, for example, 10 years, and somehow basically putting a question is that either you spend now or you're spending the same money in 10 years. Do you think that kind of a strategy will help the elementary school, which is, of course, I'm sure all of us have agreed that it is much needed, because it's such an old school. Is there a value to putting the question in such a way that we show them the price tag of maintaining that old building versus a new building?
I think that would help if the board chooses to focus. And if you think our most pressing need is at the elementary level, then the more you focus on it, make an argument that continue to put money in that old building is not a good use of taxpayers' dollars. I think you could do that. It's hard to maintain that and also then concurrently talk about the high school. So I think probably the decision now is where do we want to focus our efforts, planning efforts, communication efforts, and I guess that's the question for the board. Where do you want to do that? But I think we've learned there's probably not enough money to do everything that you need to do right now. And you're not alone. I mean, this is a challenge that every district is facing. Take it away.
No, sorry, I just wanted to make one comment. If you remember when we set off on this journey, we set off to create a long-range facilities master plan. And the question was asked, do we step back and start over? And I think this is part of what we'll talk about when we're all together on the 12th of June. But I would argue we may tweak it, but no. I mean, the solutions, the proposals that we came up with as part of the long-range plan, right? Or even bigger than the 185 that we tested. So these things happen, right? So we test things, and Bill's right. Costs are big, and this is not unique to Franklin. The costs of these projects are big, and I wish we could make them not big, but we don't have that power. What I think this does is it tells us we have to look at our master plan, say, did we go astray? I don't think we did. I think this is all intentional, and there's reason for why we got to this point. What we now need to look at is say, did we have the timing right? And maybe what the community is telling us is it's too much too soon. So we just have to look at how much of the elephant are we going to bite off at this point. Not throw the elephant out, only eat part of the elephant.
You sure we don't want a giraffe?
A giraffe is fine, yeah.
We got a lot of tiger mascots.
Let's leave this
Cats,
metaphor.
yeah.
It's a painful metaphor.
Is there anything else that we should be asking about this data? Like, you're here because you're the data guy.
No, I think I agree with Nick. We tested
Dream crusher.
Dream crusher.
Yeah.
Been called that more than once. I agree. I think, and this is a process. So what we accomplished was we did educate the community. There's several needs, and that we have a plan. So they're at aware probably that they've never been in the last few years of what you're thinking you want to do. So that was a win, and now it's just a matter of how much to do. So from a data standpoint, I think we learned that what was proposed is too much, and it really is. It's cost. At the end of the day, it really is money, and we don't have any choice but to reduce scope in order to reduce the cost and tax impact. So that's where we have to go.
In your experience, to what degree do you think it's cost versus relative valuation of the community on those individual projects?
My experience is about 80% cost.
Okay. I'm gonna write that down.
At the end of the day, for the purple people, they might have grandkids or something, and there might be a little bit of that, but generally speaking, they say, I love this community, I want to invest in this community, but there's a limit to how much I can afford. Yep. I will trust that the board will optimize that investment, but I'll give you the money to a limit, you guys figure out how to do it. There's fewer people that get triggered where say, there's no way I'm going to build an elementary school here. There might be a few loud people, but for the vast majority, they're just like, we believe you've got a good master planning process. We'll support whatever you propose, but within that dollar amount. So I think 80% is dollar.
I know it is difficult to estimate, what, as you mentioned in your survey, what the community will support, But again, in a guesstimate, I know that I can't ask you for estimate, but a guesstimate, if out of the 185 million in your past experiences, what number do you feel will most likely can be supported?
Crystal ball.
Well, yeah, the quantitative questions, I don't know, but the one thing that you do have is you do have psychological thresholds, and one is $100 million. That is a big number. The other psychological threshold you have is a buck. Right now we're at $1.40, right? And so that seems to be a point where people go, okay, that pushes me over where it's too much, where if you can get under $1, and I don't even know where that ends up from a total dollar amount, where that equates to. I know you've done some good planning, so you can reduce some of that tax impact. But those are the two numbers I would think around, but I don't know what that means architecturally. That's what these guys are here for.
Oh, you're all looking at me to answer that question.
Because even if you remove the elementary, I'm just giving the devil's advocate and just maintain elementary and put the high school, it still comes out to 145 million minimum.
The high school plus the maintenance, yes.
Yeah.
144, I believe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We're not gonna solve it right now.
No, we're not.
That's why we have the 12th. No. Nick, anything to add?
No, I would just say, don't be discouraged. I mean, the surveys are here for a purpose. This is not the first time nor the last time that a community will say no to the first ask on a survey question. Our job now is to interpret the data and take what Bill has advised us about those psychological thresholds. What do we feel is appropriate for moving forward? Should the board choose to move forward with this? And think very strategically.
All right, does anybody else have any further comment, question? All right, item C, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Annual curriculum review adoption. Mr. Blessington, please.
All right, thank you. Hopefully this is, next agenda item will be super uplifting. So I'm joined by members of our ELA resource review team, our selection team. And if you think back to a couple weeks ago, we had such a great buzz in the room with all the educators that I think took up this part of the room, and just really fortunate to be part of that process. And we look at our ELA adoption at K-8 and just the enthusiasm. And I just want to speak, and maybe I didn't have a chance to speak it last time, is our teacher leaders, they took this on. We had meetings very early in the morning. They took on a lot of extra time that they weren't compensated for, and they did it because they want to do what's best for kids. So I wanted to say that. Maybe I didn't express that enough, and just really proud of the effort. So with our recommendation that you heard last time is really our resource that we've presented to you really leans on ELA standards. It talks about our commitment to science-based early reading, and then really aligns with the Wisconsin ELA students, ELA standards for students, and really putting a quality tool in front of our teachers or support our teachers is really critical in closing some gaps we have in reading in this system. With our approval tonight, we hope to finalize our quote with Savas. The final quote will be based on final projected numbers in 24-25, includes student materials, hard copy and digital, professional development, and and extra materials for support, staff support. Knowing that I want to be thoughtful about our time, and I know that we shared a lot last time, took up a significant amount of time, answered a lot of questions, but we did want to open up for any additional questions that you had.
Linda, please.
I just wish there'd be like one measurement you could tell us that we could check a year from now to know that we moved the needle. There's just one point of data that we could look forward to.
Yeah, I think team members of the group are up here are welcome to chime in. I would say we know that, as explained last time, we're going to have that screener that's going to start next January. That's that state screener that hopefully we'll find out on July 1. That could be a large dipstick in terms of like a measurement that we'll use. Team's welcome to add anything else that I think we know that going into next year, we still will have, at K-8, we will have MAP as an additional measure too. And I think Ms. Bennett spoke to this last time in terms of implementation. We want to be realistic about our expectations about moving the needle when we're just implementing. And it's not uncommon to have an implementation dip. I'm not saying that we would have that, but that's part of implementing. This is going to take some time to develop, and I think, being patient with that, the training piece and all of that will all factor into it. But I mean, a couple of data pieces would be that literacy screener and then MAP.
I can speak a little bit to that. I mean, when we evaluate a student who has gaps, we never look at one data point. We are always looking at a spectrum of data points because no one piece could possibly give us those answers. And so I don't think that we can expect to see one data point that will tell us that this was or was not a successful, move in our curriculum. I think that you have to understand that in education that would never be an approach that we would want to take.
What does the screener do? Or what is that, a new tool or just a state designated tool?
So currently we use MAPS as our universal screener, and the state is implementing with Act 20 a new screener that we find out on July 1, and they push back the start date to January.
And that's going to kind of just tell you where kids are when they start.
Similar to MAPS, it gives you a data point where they're at. We don't know any more about that because we don't know what tool it is right now. That's decided by the state. We have no say in that. We have to bring it on.
Can I just follow up on your question, Linda? I personally, having like listened, was that 2 weeks ago now or whatever, I would think one data point that we could see as a board was just the total enthusiasm from the whole team when they were here to talk about how they were so excited to start this new program. I think just that energy in the room is a data point that you have teachers who are so excited about the program that will feed in. I mean, I can't show you data numbers on a spreadsheet about that, but I think that is one data point that's important.
And then perhaps as part of your ongoing evaluation, right, because this is going to then go into the churn of the 4-year, or the review cycle circle. Just, I think, teacher satisfaction, and it's probably going to be a lot of anecdotal information, but it would be nice if some of that could trickle back to us in some way.
Well, what about a quick survey question? Do you think this tool is making a difference in your classroom? I mean, you could send out these pulse surveys, part of your teacher.
But what would we do with that information?
We do have questions in there, something that, not to totally, but do you have the resources you need to do your job well? Rated on 1 to 5. If you answer strongly disagree, a box pops up and said, what do you need? Do you have the training you need to do your job well? So I would anticipate if we give that out and they say, oh, actually, teachers have said, I need a different reading curriculum that addresses certain types. Like,
That
that's
definitely
already,
showed up.
that was the number one thing, so that was said.
Yes.
I would hope that you would see less people saying that we need something different, what we have isn't working, and we know it's not working, give us something else.
We also know principals do like rounding very regularly with their teachers, and sometimes things like that comes out through their conversation with their principal as well.
And the PD plan, if you remember from 2 weeks ago, has development days through all 6 of our days, either as a district or in the buildings. And there's always a survey, as you've heard too, that goes after that. So it's another, that's like, to your point of a pulse, that's like an even quicker pulse that we have in the district. So we'll have plenty of data through survey from staff on the feel like and the support for implementing. The data points will be a little lagging because we're implementing year, but we'll have maps or the new tool, like to be determined, not by us, but adopted by us. And then the different checkpoints and assessments that come with the resource will be what's used through the professional learning communities when they come together and look at assessments and how students are doing.
Well, there's also the data isn't as lagging anymore because there are so many more data points through the EDIS system and that sort of thing, and how kids are doing, and that's reacted to far more quickly than it used to be. Is there one data point? Probably not. At least
I would say the
first year,
built-in
but-
pieces are we do an assessment report to the board like every fall after we get results, right? Like November-ish. So that's your annual data point that you'd have that's built in that you could start to look at over time. And then I would say also with the coherence plan, that's where our survey results come in for engagement. So those are natural moments that come to the board also, right? You'll see that in June, approve it in July. June will also be the end of year results, and Jess also does that mid-year report in December. So those are the checkpoints that are already in there with data points we have. I think as we go through those next year, if we feel like there's something we're missing or we're not hearing, then we just talk about it and add it in. But right now, I feel like we're very data rich, so I just would say, let's see how those pieces work. They should encompass it, and if we find they're not, then we'll adjust as part of that continuous improvement cycle.
I'd like to make a motion to approve my view and my perspective English language arts resources for grades 5K to 8 to be implemented starting in the 24-25 school year.
Second.
All right, I made the motion, and Mrs. Larson seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Buildings and Grounds Annual Report. Mr. Daniels, please.
So as you recall, 2 weeks ago, we presented the annual Buildings and Grounds report. It covered a variety of topics such as projects completed, upcoming projects, some energy data, an update on the HVAC tech progress, some work order management progress, things like that. I don't have much more to say, but I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has some follow-up from that discussion.
And I would just add to Andy's report is that part of adopting that this year is new because that is a piece that's built into the next coherence plan that you've had a couple glimpses at, but you have the full view with Jess bringing that forward in June. So that's part of why This and Luann's plan for IT are back this evening.
I have a question.
Please, Linda.
So your report, does that include anything for the next budget? Right, I don't see anything here. Am I missing something that will tell me what's in the next budget?
Yeah, so I think, let me just go up, slide number 2 does talk about upcoming projects for the 24-25 fiscal year. That is really just focused on those capital dollars. So just a quick brief, we're tackling the concession stand roof at the high school, that's failing. Pool tile repairs and investigation will continue. Roof section replacements at 2 different buildings, asphalt parking lot replacement at Pleasant View, some failing concrete that's kind of throughout the district, RTU replacements here at the ECC, and controls and other HVAC components at Southwood Glen. So that is focused just on the capital portion of for buildings and grounds.
Slide 2, and you have funding.
Oh, I'm so
identified.
sorry. Hey, I'm sorry. It's slide 3.
And that is just the operating dollars? It's not Fund 46, is that correct?
It is capital, not operations.
Is it Fund 46 or not?
It's the $1.26 million for capital improvements.
Is it Fund 46 or not?
It will be paid for out of Fund 46, transferred from the operational budget. So it is operating dollars.
It's not currently in Fund 46.
It's not.
So we talked about last time, the transfer of this is because our books are closing out June 30, New Year starting July 1. Andy's taking on his biggest projects as we start to clear schools. So for him to get those products and be able to not have pause in that work, especially with some of the delays in construction materials and things, having the funds there allows him to make those purchases as he needs it versus having this gap in time where we're closing out one school year and opening the next school year. So I think we talked about that last time. I don't know if anybody else on the board has questions about it. That's what that difference in language is, where it's not a simple, like it's just out of 46. It transfers from this year's budget into 46 to be used for that, to allow accessibility to those dollars in a timely manner so that Andy doesn't have delays in the work over the summer.
I understand that. My question is it in the budget that we're adopting, are those funds identified in the general fund? Or are they
Yes, it's the
identified-
capital improvement line item.
Okay,
So each year there was always 1.2 whatever million.
I got it. Okay, move on.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I move that we approve the Buildings and Grounds Annual Report as presented.
Second.
All right, motion was made by Dr. Beer, seconded by Dr. Khan. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Capital Improvement 10-year plan. Mr. Daniels, Mr. Cromie, Ms. Alinsky, please.
So again, 2 weeks ago, we did present to you the 10-year plan, something that was developed just recently. We used that facility study that we did last summer with some of our other partners and just built out what 10 years worth of work could look like utilizing $1.2+ million. I don't know that I need to go through the entire slide deck, but again, be happy to answer any questions if there's some follow-up thoughts after that presentation 2 weeks ago.
Any questions?
I move to accept the capital improvement plan as presented.
Second.
All right, motion was made by Mrs. Larson, seconded by Mrs. Sapersky. Any further discussion?
Thank you, Luann, for sitting here the whole time.
Anybody have any questions for Luann? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Technology report. Ms. Alinsky, please.
Yes, same. 2 weeks ago, I shared our technology plan. Again, that is part of the coherence plan, and as part of that coherence plan, looking for a motion to approve the technology plan as presented 2 weeks ago.
I move to approve the technology plan as presented 2 weeks ago.
Second.
Motion was made by Mrs. Larson, seconded by Dr. Beer. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Luann.
Preliminary
Thank you, Andy.
budget for 24-25. Mr. Cromie.
Yep, so back in January, I brought to you our Fund 10 and Fund 27 kind of budget at a glance. The initial kind of operational components. And at that time, we were looking at a deficit of about $1 million or $1.2 million or something along those lines. If we go all the way to the budget at a glance document, which can align with what was presented in January, you're going to see at the very bottom of this in Fund 10, this nice big surplus of $26,000, $26,316. So I'm going to talk about how we got there and talk about how fluid budget actually is. So how we got there, one, as you know, in April, we did some modifications to the health plan, so that took over 50% of that $1.2 million away. I asked all of our department heads to go back and do a zero-based budget this particular year. We found approximately 300, I don't want to say we found. Departments took a look at what do they actually need to operate, which again, when we did that for 23-24 was a new concept for our department heads. So now this was their second iteration of that. So having a greater understanding of what actually all goes into their individual budgets, provided them an opportunity to take a look at that. That was around $300,000, and there's a smattering of some other smaller pieces, but that was the vast majority of that. Again, budget surplus of $26,316. That sounds super great. Right up till you find on Thursday from DPI that Title I funding was cut by $194,000. So if we simply go to our revenue line item, 751 on the left, and reduce that by $194,000, that alone, that single item, puts our budget deficit back down to $168,000 in the red, right? So those are how fluid kind of things still are at this time of year. Just a quick synopsis of why that happened. The federal government uses different free and reduced data that we do. They use estimates that are provided, and they're multi-years back, so they're finally catching up with 2022. We dip below a 5% threshold based on their federal number. The 5% threshold drops you to a different level of funding. So because we dip below that, we fall into this different level of funding. We were on a call today. There's nothing we can do about that. It is what it is basically what you're told. And I've dealt with the federal government at other districts, and that's very common language. So in any case, we're still tracking lots of different things, right? You'll see on page 4, there's an enrollment projection. I know one of the questions that came about, does that change the Roffer study? Roffers did a study, it doesn't change the study, but those are the projections based on next year. So a quick synopsis of how I do that is I take actual butts and seats today, or this particular year, and I take a look at past history. I typically use about 5 years of what's the difference, or how many 4K students typically come in. Now we've only had a 5 years, so like we're looking at all those. What is the difference between 4K and 5K at every building? So we can make a projection not only in 4K to 5K holistically, but by building. I take a look at every grade that same way and by building. So kindergarten to first to second to third, and take a look, are there jumps in any particular grades or any particular buildings that would help lead us to think that staffing might be different at that particular building. But certainly as we cascade that all the way forward, that gives you a projection for next year. Now, again, like every other projection, could we have more students come into high school from 8th to 9th grade than I projected? Absolutely. I don't have the parochial enrollments for schools, so I'm just making an assumption based on some history and plugging that in. So while that's fluid, it has some validity to the projections based on past history. Open enrollment, page 5, that's still a projection at this point too. So I know that Laura and Heidi in our business office, they went through and slotted all the seats that we had available that there were requests for. Now we have to determine, will those people take seats? And if not, are we offering to others, or even are there other people to offer to? So 4K, 1 seat open, like 50 applications, right? We're gonna fill that 1K seat. But if you look at spaces where we might have 10 seats available and 11 people apply, yep, we're offering 10. Probably someone's not gonna take it, we'll offer the 11th, but are we gonna fill all 10? Maybe, maybe not. So we take, again, an assumption of how many seats we're actually gonna fill, really based on how many applications did we have. Helps us fill that, but again, we still have to fill that. So that's still an area to take a look at that's not entirely totally fleshed out. We have assumptions, but not entirely fleshed out. So this is where we are. You can see Fund 27 of the budget at a glance below. Always has to balance to zero, but same philosophy. We're taking a look at staffing. based on IEPs, working with Leo and his Student Services Department to determine needs. The dollars then kind of follow the needs, and we make sure that we adjust to that appropriately. A couple of things in here that might pop out. You'll notice if we go to Fund 39, so debt service, if we take a look at the fund balance, sorry, wrong slide there, is on 46. Fund balance for this particular year, when we budgeted for it, went up roughly $3.5 million. That was in exact relation to the amount of additional levy that we did in the fall. And if you recall, in the fall, we hadn't quite exactly decided if we were going to diffuse those dollars or hold those for a first payment on referendum. Through the course of the fall and into March, we were advised we should diffuse those, so we went to diffuse those. But we're comparing budget numbers that were approved in October versus what's actually operational as of today. So when we get to the annual meeting, we'll notice that that amount will have been accounted for, and actually an additional $500,000. If you recall, we diffused $4 million or $4 million in change. So we actually used $500,000 of additional fund balance to help offset some debt. I believe that Anna Lee provided some an adjustment to food service prices in the last Friday update. So that's not represented in here. That came about after reviewing these. And again, these are prepared at the beginning of May in order to have enough time to make sure we have everything set, get it ready, get it into the documents, right? So things are changing from the first week of May when this was adjusted, certainly to now. The additional revenue that'll generate is approximately $37,000, keeping the amount of lunches the same, raising it by 10 cents a lunch. Probably the biggest piece is going to come out of community education and recreation. You'll notice an additional local tax levy. This year, probably at this point, estimated at $6.6 million. Now, part of what will come in front of the board, assuming it's not so out of proportion that it's astronomical, we'll bring the Cirque building in June. So that has had some iterations. We had to go to the Planning Commission 3 different times. For that particular building, that's usually like you show up and they ask some questions and then they approve your plan. So that delayed some of it. Working with the DNR based on the wetland delineation and things like that took additional time than we had expected. But that building did go out to bid at the beginning of May. A week and a half ago, we held, it's called, it's a pre-bid meeting, so it's called a pre-bid meeting. We had tons and tons of interest. So all 6 vendors that are eligible to bid on it showed up. I would guess probably 40 subcontractors that they employ in some fashion showed up. So what that tells me when they're all looking at each other is that we better sharpen the pencil because I can see all of you here and I know all of you are interested in this particular project. So I think that bodes well. But what's added in here is the levy that I think will potentially will need to make that project work. So several years ago in the mid 2010s, DPI allowed a one-time transfer from recreation to Fund 21. So that was $1.15 million. And when that was transferred around 2015, 16, 17, the intention was to use that for a recreation facility. With the 6.6 million, that puts us at about $8.1 million, and we certainly have some additional fund balance in recreation to use towards that particular building.
Quick question.
Sure.
What's Fund 21?
Fund 21 is really considered gifts under DPI's total like woofer coding system, but really what's happened with that is they've asked districts to move like your clubs. So clubs fundraise, they spend their club dollars. All of that has really moved into Fund 21. And they've allowed us to, again, that one-time transfer in the mid-2010s to put funds from recreation to be used for some larger project into Fund 21 as well.
Is it fair to compare that to like a restricted gift fund or something?
So
like that?
entirely, yes. Everything in there can only be, so let's use marching band. Marching band's gonna do fundraisers, right? They're gonna put money in there for marching band. It is coded to marching band. They're not like a general pot. A little bit different than like property taxes in Fund 10, right? We use that for a myriad of items. I don't even break out exactly what it's used for. But that can only be used for marching band. It's coded exactly to marching band. We keep actually a separate sheet so we know exactly dollars in, dollars out for every club that's in there. as well as holding that $1.15 million. So ultimately, what was added in here is the anticipation that the project will come in at a reasonable rate, and board will pass it. But again, we're gonna ask you in June to approve preliminary budget number 2. The real goal is so that we can cut POs for Fund 10 and Fund 27, our CIP projects, and we can pay people starting July 1st. The annual meeting will be a 3rd iteration of our budget, and then the final budget will be approved by the board, including tax levy, in October. So we're gonna talk about the Cirque building in June. We'll vote on it in July. If we don't like it, then that goes out, right? That's taken out, and for the annual meeting, that part won't be in there. Certainly a tax levy associated with that. Cirque building would not be in at that time as well, either. So really where we are, we're still fluid in operating budget, Fund 10 and Fund 27. The full intention is to still pay 4.12% to all employee groups. Just to add to the 4.12% based on the conversations from the very first presentation tonight. So our teaching group, our specialist group, which includes OT, PTs, our speech and language, special education, right? All of that falls into one aggregate bucket. They're the only one that has that group is the only one that's calculated around the middle of November, and we hold that number at 4.12%. So as people leave, and I'll give you an example that we can all use for the 12 of us up here. But as people leave, that 4.12% pot of money stays the same, but it's now just being distributed to less people. So right now, it's currently at about 4.36% versus the 4.12. So a real easy example here, if there's $100, there's 12 of us up here, I'm gonna divide it out, I'm gonna give all of us $8.33. If 2 of us decide to leave and we still pass out the $100, we're now all gonna get 10. So the pot of money stays the same, but as people resign or retire, they get removed from having access to that pot because we were not paying them in 24, 25. So the percentage that each person's gonna get on average increases. Only group that does that for. It doesn't do it for administrators, custodians, secretaries, EAs, but that group right now is somewhere around 4.35, 4.36%.
Can I ask a question? Sure. You know, with the community, I know it's a different project. With the community add tax levy, do you think that with the tax levy, with the referendum which we are thinking, is it going to impact the perception of the community that, hey, I'm being tax levy for this one, and now you're asking me to this? So this is a very small amount. This is a very small amount, but do you think the timing? I'm just kind of trying to contemplate the timing of this tax levy and the additional referendum.
It's a great question. So first of all, our tax levy right now, with this in it, is set to say it's $7.94, which is what all the communication regarding the referendum is based off of, that $7.94. So if the Cirque building were not going to be approved, I would propose we move for defeasance to hold that $7.94 flat so that we are consistent with that particular piece. We are cognizant that Cirque building, and if we decide to load up a whole bunch of equipment over here in August, like that's not going to be a great look, right? So we are planning that, and we've told our bidders, like, we're looking at a November to potentially March. Some of our the GCs, the general construction companies, have said, if we were to bid you actually in March, it's probably more beneficial to you. So even though we might talk about it in June and July, it still might not even be started for another 9 months. So we have told them to bid that way. Like, we want the building for the best cost that you can give us for us. If we have to wait 4 more months to get it, we'll take it. Like, that is arbitrary start date for us is more, what's the total dollar amount to get the building that recreation can use, like right now, based on their programming. So there is going to be some of that, but our communication's based off the $7.94. So in some fashion, we should work to try to make that happen. If we build a Cirque building, great. If we defease, that actually lessens the overall impact long-term. Probably not a ton, because it's $6 million versus, I know it's not 185 after tonight, but it's something different, right? But still, 6 million is a portion of it.
Linda, please.
Back to the Cirque building. We, the last time the board talked about this, back in March of '23, we had an estimated building cost of $6.3 million. It looks like it's now costing $7.6 million. Is that safe to say?
I would guess it's probably going to be north of there. We actually hired an independent general contractor. We paid them about $15,000 to take our drawings and bid it out. And at that time in October was around 7.7. So I would assume we're probably pushing up to 8.
So more than we approved?
Nope, we didn't approve anything. What was approved was the ability to draw up the plans and go to bid. So
Well,
we
we
didn't
also-
approve a dollar amount.
So it was a blank check?
No,
It wasn't?
Nope.
Oh, you just said we didn't approve anything. Was it a blank check or was it a number?
it was the ability to draw plans and
Just
go to
answer my
bid.
question. Was
I
there a
am answering your
number?
question.
Was there a number or was there?
It was the
a blank
ability
check?
for them to pursue acquiring bids.
We don't
It
know
was a
what the
process.
Lindy, we don't know what the number's gonna be until they.
I'm
bid
just
it
saying, you
out.
could call it a blank check
No,
then.
you approved a process.
What is your question?
My question is, you increased levy $2 million in 23-24 for the purpose of that building. And now you're increasing another 4.8 million.
So when the estimates came back, it came back higher than what was maybe shared as a preliminary number at that point. By no means is that Andy or Annalee or anyone else at the table saying, we just want to spend more money on it. It's what the cost is coming back at. Ultimately, that comes back to this table in June and the board decides that. Andy doesn't decide that, Annalee doesn't decide
Right,
that,
so
or
why
anybody
are
else.
we approving levy that we have not even seen the building cost?
We're
not approving a levy.
anything. We're discussing current budget as it stands.
Are we taking action on this budget
No.
tonight?
No,
No.
we're going to ask you to take action in June, but you don't approve a tax levy until October.
Right now, you just approve it in June so that when we
I
turn
don't,
our
I
fiscal
don't want
year,
a
we can-
$4.8 million increase for this project, okay? I'm just saying that right now. At what point do I tell you, no, 4.8 is too much? So when do we discuss that?
So when
Now?
the CERC building comes in June as an
Why don't we discuss it
independent.
now and give you direction, say,
Because
no,
we don't
4.8 is
have-
too much?
Because we don't have a bid. We don't have any bids.
We already told us it's gonna be almost $8 million. How do you feel about $8 million? Is that okay?
Can we discuss it when it's actually an agenda item?
It's in the budget right now for $7.6 million.
But we
This is
don't
an
have-
item about this $7.6 million number.
We don't know what the actual number is going to be until the bids come back.
Well, all I know is
So
that
we
right
can talk
now,
about potential numbers,
Huh?
but you want, what is the real number? We don't have.
no,
what
I
is
don't
the
want the real number. I'm just saying, I don't want it more than the 6.3 I talked about before. I already know that 7.6 is too much right now. I don't even know what the
Well, this is
big
an
number is.
informational conversation, and so now
I
we
don't-
have the information that you don't want it about that. Thank you for that information.
And I hope this board takes into account, there is, there can be too much.
Yes, thank you.
There can be. And it was 6.3 the last time we saw this number, and now he's talking $8 million. And we have not seen anything about this
Because the-
project.
And we haven't spent the money.
It's not fair to say we haven't seen anything about this project. We haven't had any discussion in open session because we've been repeatedly informed in weekly communications that the process has been delayed by forces outside of their control.
But they have additional information that could be shared.
Okay.
At this point, I don't, other than we have a full set of specs and they're out to bid.
You just told you had an estimate of $8 million, so I think
I-
that's a
I'm
real
Preliminary that goes out to bid. I would appreciate if at the board, we're not creating an atmosphere where it appears we're not being transparent.
Yeah.
If there's something you think we have that you don't have, please let me know what you think that is now so we can move forward. But I would appreciate if we don't create this environment at the table where we're continuing to question the transparency and honesty of the team, because that's what it feels like, and I want that to be honest, because all the bids are coming back, expected to be back for June with all of it, and it is completely in the board's hands to decide. We're just bringing you the information because we agreed as a board to go ahead and go to this next step and get the bids. The bids were delayed for reasons that we couldn't control, or they would have been here, I think March was originally when we were hoping, right? So there's communication line along the way saying, this is why it's been delayed.
This is the first time I'm seeing a $7.6 million number in a budget document that you gave to me last week.
Okay.
Is that transparency? I have to, surprise, $7.6 million.
It's not a surprise. It's here now, and we'll have the bids in June.
It was
and then
surprised
you'll
when
be
I
able-
saw it.
Okay.
Surprised when I saw it.
Your
That's
surprise is
fair.
registered.
That's
Thank
fair.
you.
Does anybody have other questions about the budget or maybe?
I did have questions, but he did not provide the answers yet.
If you would like to ask them now, he indicated he would answer them in open session. So don't imply that he refused to answer your questions. He said he would have the answers, so
I said I
feel
don't
free.
have the answers.
He said he would have them for the meeting. I read the email myself. Please feel free to ask your questions.
Because I don't understand the debt service fund balance, where that came from.
So
where it's
again, we
going.
levied an additional three
Can we
point.
see that slide up there?
Yep, we levied an additional $3.5 million in October of 2023 with the intention of either using those dollars to defease or using those dollars to help with the first payment, debt payment from a referendum. Ultimately, we were advised that we should use those for a defeasance, so those dollars were defeased in March.
So
What you're
are-
looking at in this particular document is actual numbers from 2022-23, budget numbers from 23-24, not actual operational dollars and how it was actually applied. So at the time, without a decision on what to do with those dollars, they were held in fund balance when we approved the budget in October of 2023. Again, we actually purposed $4 million in total dollars for defeasance in March of 2024.
All of which I recall hearing and discussing.
I'm not sure the 23-24 budget was unbalanced that way, I guess. I thought we were defeasing $8 million.
We did not defease $8 million.
I know we didn't, but I thought there was a plan to pay off what we owed and defease the rest. That's why we levied that much more. But now we have it in fund balance. And now, we're not even gonna, can we even transfer that out anywhere? It's been levied for,
We used it in March.
Used.
We used
We
$4 million
discussed
in March. $4 million above the expenditures that are listed there in March.
He came to us, he said his advisors were recommending we take this action now. We discussed it.
And so we took action.
What's your next question?
but we have available $8 million.
$8 million is
Available, we have
two
available.
items. It's the actual debt service of principal and interest and an additional $3.5 million. We actually did pay the principal and interest during the course of the year, and we levied the 3.5 plus an additional $500,000 of Fund 39 fund balance in March. You're looking at budget numbers and trying to reconcile those to what's actually happened, is my thought process here.
So we still have additional fund balance, though, at the end of this year.
Yep, probably about $2.6 million.
Well, it
Give or take.
says it was 6.
Correct, but we spent $3.5 million of the additional tax levy plus an additional $500,000.
okay.
So we levied, or defeased $4 million.
Okay.
That's not accounted for in the expenditures there because at that particular time of approving it, we hadn't decided officially what to do with those dollars.
Okay. I will, you can just send me the answers to the other questions.
I'll be happy to answer them now so everybody's hearing.
Well, they'll read them afterwards too, so it's getting late. And we're not proving anything today, so. My points were made regarding the building, which is my biggest concern. I also guess would ask you if just pretend that instead of trying to keep the rate the same, we said, keep the levy the same. Could you make that happen?
Probably. I'm not 100% sure, but I would guess so.
And what ideas would you offer?
Well, we wouldn't build the circ building because that would not be possible. So we could either defease less or defease nothing. And we would be either at or below where we were last year. I guess I would caution us if we're going to go to referendum and stick on the $7.94 and what that will all impact. Because approximately, our defeasance has allowed us to set up about $85 million of zero tax impact in referendum projects.
We could build a smaller circ building and still keep the levy the same, is that correct?
I would say
Really?
no, because we'd have to do an entirely new set of drawings and start the process over. So we'd be about another $500,000 into the project, which we talked about in March of 2023 as well. Because it's not like you just shrink it and they bid off of a shrink document. You have to redesign the entire process.
And a smaller building wouldn't meet the needs established.
Correct.
Well, I don't even know how the scope has changed now. It's $7.9 million. Maybe there was a scope change. I have no
Scope change.
There was
idea.
not.
Have you
It
seen a
costs more
scope
to buy a
change
gallon of
from-
milk
from
too.
you?
I've seen nothing come to us other than the $7.9 million.
The floor plan that you saw in March is relatively unchanged to the actual full building. The only difference is the $6 million came off of a floor plan and a rough drawing of a site plan sent out to 6 general contractors and said, well, what do you think this is gonna cost to build? An official full set of scale drawings draws every portion of that to scale of exactly what it's supposed to look like, significantly more detailed, where now they can look at it and actually say, we need 565 feet of CAD wire in order to make this work. And we need, I don't even know, 6,000 studs
I get it,
to
I
make
get
this
it.
work.
Okay, you don't need to keep going on there.
All right, anybody else have further questions? All right, policies 6210, English language learners, 6430, services for children with disabilities, 6460, gifted and talented, 6713, assistive technology and services, 5500, records, retention and confidentiality of student records, 5260, search and seizure. This is, or these are action items, and one of them is a retirement. I'm looking for a motion.
I would move to approve the school board policies as previously stated by President Sprague.
I second.
And I think we should also have a,
That's a
move to
separate one.
retire.
The
Oh,
retirement is a
okay.
separate one.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, motion was made by Mrs. Larson, seconded by Dr. Khan. Any further discussion?
Which one is being retired?
6713, assistive technology services and services.
It's being folded into a
We
different
talked a
one.
little bit last time about that super long document from the state, that we have a policy that says we adopt what the state says.
Yeah, the
The
language
DPI
in our
policy.
policy is replicated in the
Mhm.
model policies from DPI. It'd be on page 22 and 23 of that model policies document, so.
Remember you asked about the model policies and could you see them?
It wasn't my understanding we're limiting our policy, we're just referencing it. Let me just see if I can.
No motion.
Yeah, motion, anybody else have further questions? Discussion. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
So now I would make the motion to retire school board policy 6713.
Second.
All right, motion was made by Mrs. Larson, seconded by Dr. Beer. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Board liaison reports. I did attend CISA yesterday, and I will, it was the annual meeting, so I will send a report. Thank you for the SWSA email, Linda.
Right, and then, I'm guessing that's my last meeting in AG will.
Step
I-
in.
I think so.
We'll figure out how to.
Communicate that.
Yeah.
All right, school and community engagement reports.
A couple of us were at the construction house last, 2 Saturdays ago?
I think so.
It does seem like a long time ago. Which I always think is a great event. Encourage everybody to get to if you ever get a chance, to see the work that our students have produced. I mean, it's a house that's for sale if anybody wants to buy it. Last I heard, it had not sold, so.
I think that's true.
Anyway, it's fun to see that as a project, but it's also really great to hear from the students of, what did they learn? What was their favorite part? What, what connections were made and things like that. It's far more than they just get sitting in the classroom.
Agreed. It's always a good event. Anybody else? All right, future agenda items, 24-25 SWSA agreement, 24-25 preliminary budget approval, coherence plan, end of year report, and new coherence plan. Student handbook, staff handbook, Franklin Forward resolution, annual academic standards adoptions, CERC building bids, and 24-25 policy review schedule. Does anybody have any comments?
I just want to, I know you'll be leaving us, Mr. Blessington, but I want to congratulate you on getting that ELA curriculum through as a real accomplishment during your time here, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion was made by Mrs. Sapersky, seconded by Mrs. Witkowski. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We are adjourned at 8:55.
It's earlier than I thought.